Good morning. I'm lacking the gavel, so I'll just say we're here. We're ready to start. I'd like to call to order the second meeting of the Interim Finance Committee of the 25-26 Interim, and I'd like to welcome everyone joining us here this morning in person in Las Vegas and in Carson City and online. I am Senator Marilyn Dondero Loop, and I will be chairing the meeting this morning. So will the secretary please call the roll?
Assembly Member Anderson.
Present.
Assembly Member Bacchus.
Present.
Assembly Member Brown May.
Present.
Assembly Member Carter for Assembly Member Yeager. Assembly Member Dickman. Here. Assembly Member Flanagan for Assembly Member Howdegee. Assembly Member Hafen. Assembly
Here.
Member Hibbets.
Here.
Assembly Member Koenig. Here. Assembly Member Mosca.
Here.
Assembly Member O'Neill. Here. Assembly Member Torres Fawcett. Assembly Member Watts.
Here.
Vice Chair Monroe Moreno.
Here.
Senator Buck.
Here.
Senator Cannizzaro.
Here.
Senator Neal.
Here.
Senator Scheibel for Senator Wynn. Senator Steinbeck for Senator Stone.
Here.
Senator Taylor. Senator Titus.
I am here.
Chair Dondero Loop.
And I am here. And please mark Senator Scheibel present as she arrives. And thank you very much for all of you who have taken time to be here today. I know that some of you have had to take time off of work, and we appreciate that. Before we move on to today's agenda, standard housekeeping items, please reminder to turn off your electronic devices and your phones. And those providing testimony today, please make sure that you state and spell your name for the record. And please, if you have a card, hand it to the committee secretary. With that, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is public comment. This is the first period of public comment. There will be a second period at the end of the meeting. For those of you providing public comment, state and spell your name for the record. To call in to provide testimony, please dial 888-475-4499. When prompted to provide the meeting ID, please enter 831-7834-9544 and then press pound. When prompted for the participant ID, please press pound. The call-in information is also on the agenda. And so with that, I will move to Carson City. Is there anyone there for public comment today? I don't see anybody coming to the table here in Las Vegas. Is there anyone for public comment? Not seeing anyone. ABH, would you check the phone lines?
Thank you, Chair. To provide public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public line is open and working, but we have no public comment callers at this time.
Thank you very much. All right, next we'll move on to items C and D, which I will take jointly. Members, in your meeting packet are the draft minutes from April 11th, 2024, June 13th, 2024 meetings of the IFC. Unless there are any suggestions, edits, or corrections, I will accept a motion.
So moved.
Thank you very much from Assembly Member Monroe Moreno. Second from Senator Cannizzaro. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, with that, we will go on to agenda item E. And I believe we have an ARPA report. And Mr. Leiser, are you in Carson City?
I am. Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Brody Leiser, and I'm with the Fiscal Analysis Division of the Legislative Council Bureau. I will walk through Agenda Item E1, the Statement of American Rescue Plan Act, Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Fund, obligations and remaining unobligated balance, and summarize the requests that have been submitted for consideration by the committee today. The table has been provided as a separate handout outside of the meeting packet. Members should have a hard copy. It is also available on the committee meeting webpage listed under Meeting Material, Agenda Item E1. The top of page 1 is, just as a reminder, is a high-level summary displaying actual expenditures through fiscal year 2024, amounts currently authorized, and the remaining unobligated balance, which is zero. Just as a reminder, the state did obligate 100% of the state fiscal recovery funds by the December 31st, 2024 deadline to do so. And any remaining funding that has yet to be spent must be expended by December 31st, 2026. As agencies continue to reconcile their FY 2025 actual expenditures, we will be working to incorporate those actual expenses into our version of the table. We had hoped to have preliminary information added for this meeting, but other projects were given priority, including getting the appropriations brief done, which I think members all have a copy of on their desks. Again, as a reminder, that our table generally lists program descriptions and amounts in chronological order based on the budgetary approval date. Revisions or updates to existing rows following the June IFC meeting are identified in red text and mostly just reflect savings that were approved at that June meeting. There is just one item before the committee today under Agenda Item F, which would, if approved, reconcile budget authority for previously approved projects for the Department of Administration, but does not increase or decrease overall authority for the projects. And Chair Dondero Loop, with that concludes my remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, I appreciate your time, and we miss you down here, but thank you for being there. All right, with that, we will go on to item F, and I believe that Ms. Greenemeyer is in the audience in Carson City. Am I correct? Apologies, item E2.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Tiffany Greenemeyer, Governor's Finance Office Director. Here to present item E2, Statement of American Rescue Plan Act Coronavirus State Recovery Funds. There has been a statement that has been provided as a separate handout from the meeting packet. And at the top of the page 1 is a high-level summary displaying the expenditures from fiscal year 2022, 2023, and 2024, and expenditures to date for fiscal year 2025. To date, we have expended approximately $1,851 million, or 67.6% of the total coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds, with 100% of the remaining funds shown as obligated. Since fiscal year 2025, state fiscal year end closings are still in process. Final numbers to be deobligated for fiscal year 2025 will not be available until mid-September. According to this statement, if the request before the committee for consideration today is approved, the balance will remain at zero, with 100% of all coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds marked as obligated. The table generally lists program descriptions and amounts in chronological order based on the budgetary approval date and the item submitted before the consideration by the committee today is on row 292, page 24. This item facilitates reconciliation or alignment of budget authority with the funding award and does not increase or decrease overall authority for the related project. We do have updated columns on the spreadsheet now, which is within the table that you guys have. So closed awards have been grayed out, percentage of awards spent to date column, and a column with project number for easier cross-referencing. For those projects that show a low amount spent, this does not mean that nothing is happening on the project or the agency does not have expenditures. The agencies may be doing other work on the project, such as waiting for permits or approvals, or they may have requests for reimbursement still to be submitted. With that being said, the agencies could also have requests under review with the ARPA team for completeness and compliance with the project scope of work, and the reimbursements has yet to be processed. The ARPA team has received over 225 requests for reimbursements in the past 30 days, many of them with hundreds of pages of backup that must be reviewed to check for missing documents and to make sure none of the invoices or expenses have been included in a previous reimbursement. With that concludes my presentation, and we stand for any questioning. I also want to let you know that I do have recipients available for questions.
Thank you very much. And I do believe we have a question from Assemblymember Backus.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I do want to thank the GFO for providing an update after our last IFC. Always one of my concerns is we had the large funding going to OSIT for the broadband expansion. And I think it was in our last IFC where we had realized that the federal government was going to pull back considerable BEAD funding. So I appreciate the update that we received, that we have moved forward with the broadband construction, but I would be curious, and I understand Mr. Mitchell may be here, so I'd be curious for an update with respect to that project. I know we're working on, I believe it's called the Middle Mile, with respect to the funds that we have allocated from ARPA, but just kind of curious how we anticipate completing that project if the federal funding is not there. As I recall, the BEAD funding was quite considerable.
Good morning, members of the committee and Assemblymember Backus. Brian Mitchell for the record, BRIAN-MITCHELL. The BEAD program, just a quick bit of history for everybody. The state was awarded $416 million through the BEAD program. This is not an ARPA program, but it's an IIJA program. And so it has different funding timelines and different rules and regulations. The state was one of the first out of the gate, one of 3 states that were approved during the Biden administration. And we ran a subgrantee selection process and selected awards, and those were approved. Then when the change in administration happened, the new administration put a pause on the BEAD program while they reevaluated the program. And then on June 6th, the Department of Commerce, the U.S. Department of Commerce, issued a new policy notice that rescinded Nevada's approved BEAD plan. And I want to be clear here, it did not rescind the award, but it rescinded the approved BEAD plan and asked all 50 states, regardless of where they were in the process, to begin a new, what is called a benefit of the bargain bidding round that would last 90 days. And essentially, it's a best and final offer round for broadband. So we rescinded all of our previously made awards. And within the 90-day period that started June 6th and ends September 4th, we will have completed a new subgrantee selection process that meets and conforms with all of the new rules for the BEAD program from the Department of Commerce. And we will submit a revised final proposal to NTIA on September 4th. The Department of Commerce has committed to a very quick turnaround for all 50 states and will have all of the BEAD funds approved and out the door to every state, including Nevada, by the end of the calendar year 2025. Specifically to your question regarding how this interacts with the ARPA funds, the two programs should be considered separate. The projects are separate and are proceeding independently, and so the Department of Commerce caused delay in the BEAD program will not impact any of our expenditures related to ARPA, and those projects continue to move on time and on schedule. And and once the BEAD programs come online, they will integrate in with the middle mile programs that we're funding through ARPA, and those providers will be able to use the middle mile infrastructure we're building in the ARPA program to be able to serve individual homes and businesses through the BEAD program.
Madam Chair, if I may have a follow-up. Thank you so much, Mr. Mitchell, for that. I guess for me, because listening to you do the presentation on the middle mile, the last mile, I know we spent significant time talking about this in session. If the BEAD funding is completely pulled back for whatever reason, it seems like this administration will give money, take it away, give it back, and there's just really no guarantees with that. So if the money was not reawarded to us after that 90-day period in the subsequent application, because I think there was a lot of criticism by the administration with broadband, what will happen? I mean, will our middle mile be able to reach some of the rural areas? Didn't we kind of need that last mile so that there would be connection for those living out in the rural areas to access broadband?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember Bacchus. Brian Mitchell for the record. You're absolutely right that the administration, there have been a lot of uncertainties regarding a lot of different federal funding pots, and I don't want to minimize those, including for funding streams that have been pulled in other areas. What I will say, and certainly take this with a grain of salt, but there have been no discussions in Washington, D.C. among Congress or among the administration that these funds would be in any way pulled or pulled back. The Department of Commerce and the President are both very committed to getting broadband funds out there. They just wanted, to do it their way rather than the way of the previous administration. As far as, how these funds interact with the middle mile projects, and whether or not, if the funding was pulled, how that would, play into the rural areas. And just maybe it would be helpful if I described a bit about the broadband ecosystem and compared it to roads. And I apologize for those of you who have heard this analogy before, and also apologies to the folks at NDOT. So in order to get broadband to a community, you first have to build a middle mile highway to get there, and then you can build off neighborhood roads with last mile. So the funding that we're building with middle mile is absolutely essential to any last mile project, whether it's federally funded or whether a private provider or a provider using private funds in the future would be able to serve those areas. And so the middle mile funds that we're putting in are absolutely essential to both the BEAD program, but also to the future of connectivity in this state and closing the digital divide, which I know is something that everyone wants to do. Again, I think I'm very confident that that we will produce a final proposal on September 4th that will be acceptable to the administration, and that after a year's worth of delay, we will end up with our funds and be able to move forward in an expeditious manner on the BEAD program. One thing that I'll mention, one change that I think I'll mention that's been that perhaps has been productive, since these changes have happened is that the a lot of the BEAD program requirements administrative requirements on our subgrantees or our subrecipients have been removed or been significantly scaled back. So we anticipate there being less burden on potential subgrantees moving forward, and that will allow for faster completion times of these projects.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mitchell, for that update. I look forward. We may have this conversation later, just kind of keeping track of that, but I appreciate that the ARPA dollars are getting spent down and hopefully will be spent by December 31st of 2026. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much. And I'll go to Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just had a quick follow-up because I want to get a little bit more historical information on the record. So you've been at OSIT for a while. And so in 2017, there was also movement around federal government. And I believe there was a grant that folks were looking at around $3.9 billion of federal funding that was available in order to build Wi-Fi and connection to schools and libraries through Humboldt County and some other places. Did you ever receive any of that federal money in 2017 under Sandoval? Or because I'm trying to build the connection between the past and the future, right? And the present. And when I was pulling up like news media in 2017, the state put in $2 million for infrastructure. And then there was a conversation with E-Rate Central, which was a consulting company where we were looking at $3.9 billion in federal funding that was available. So did we ever draw down any money when we were talking about this 3 to 5 year plan in 2017 from that $3.9 billion grant, or did it not happen?
Thank you, Senator Neal, for the question. Brian Mitchell for the record. And you're right, I have been at OSIT for a really long time. And so going way back into the cobwebby recesses of my brain, the funding program I believe you are referring to is what's called the E-Rate program, which is a Universal Service Fund program that is administered by the Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC. And this is a program that funds broadband connections for schools and libraries only. And so the E-Rate program, what it does is it funds, it's a discount program. And so depending on the poverty level of the school district, the E-Rate program will pay a discount amount or a discount percentage on the costs of the one-time costs of construction, and then the ongoing costs of the monthly recurring service for a school or a library. So starting in 2017, this was before, the pandemic and before there were any thoughts of large amounts of federal money for broadband. One of the best ways to get broadband to an unserved community was to utilize the E-Rate program. And if there was a school or a library that was not connected to fiber and didn't have a affordable, scalable connection to the internet for those students, using the E-Rate program to build fiber to that community was one way to get fiber to the community at a significant discount. And then after that, that internet service provider could cost allocate funding, additional infrastructure that would then be able to be used for the rest of the community. So we very aggressively went after these funds. Because it's a discount percentage that didn't equal 100%, it did require a match. And most of the time, the school districts could not afford the match for the one-time construction costs of building this infrastructure because it's so expensive. So that's where that $2 million in state money came in. And while I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head for how much we were able to draw down, it was in the, I believe it was in about the $50 million range in federal funds we were able to leverage over, about a 6 or 7 year period and the end result is we went from having, I believe, I think 11 or 12 of our school districts in the state that had some percentage of their schools connected only wirelessly, to now we're down to only a handful of schools in the state, schools period, not school districts, but schools period, that do not have a fiber connection. And through the initiative that we're doing now, every school in the state will have will be connected via fiber. The other thing that we were able to use this program for was tribal connectivity, and we worked with 12 tribal nations to set up a tribal library and get that certified through the state library, who's been a wonderful partner of ours. And then we were able to build fiber to 12 very unserved tribal libraries, and that fiber has then been utilized both for connecting their administrative building or their smoke shop or other places, and also broader community connectivity. So yes, it's been a very successful program, Senator Neal.
Madam Chair, quick follow-up. Thank you. So let me just tell you where I'm going. So I was trying to understand the intersection, right? Because you were saying you drew down 50 million and it was over a 6 to 7 year period. So that's 23, 24. Then ARPA money comes in. So I want you to educate me on the intersection between the E-rate and then the 23 million that's been drawn down from the 188 million, and how what is it's being expended upon. So here's what I understand. So we started off with, sounds like we're changing to fiber, because fiber I don't think was contemplated in 2017. Was it? There's been a shift.
No shift, Senator Neal. Brian Mitchell, for the record, it's always been about fiber.
Okay. All right. So then I'm going back to my original intersecting question, which is, if the drawdown was 50 million and there were some schools and over 6 or 7 year period, which brought us into 23, 24, educate me on the intersection of where the 23 million is operating or has operated and where the 188 million will go, because it sounds like there's an overlap in what the 50 million did from 2017 to what we're doing now. And that may or may not be true, but I want you to educate me.
Thank you for the question, Senator Neal. Brian Mitchell, for the record. I can assure you there's no overlap, and there's plenty of need throughout Nevada for better internet connectivity. So the initial E-rate funds, we targeted schools and school districts that were unserved. And for those that participated, there was no longer a need to connect to that school anymore because it already was connected to fiber, and so there's no need for us to build to it. So for the ARPA dollars, we reached out to new schools or to schools that hadn't been previously connected, and are working to get those schools connected. So two different funding streams doing the same thing, but are connecting different places, and and ultimately together. There's no one funding stream, Senator, that can solve our digital divide in this state, and so we're leveraging and utilizing multiple different funding streams to be able to to meet the needs of Nevadans wherever they live. Regarding kind of the purpose and the funding that has been allocated, this funding is allocated for middle mile and for last mile. And so on the middle mile side, we're connecting over 200 state government facilities, community anchor institutions, schools and libraries, and other similar facilities. And then we've partnered with several local governments, including Clark County, where Clark County will be leveraging the investments that we make to connect an additional 300 to 400 local government facilities to fiber that are unserved and unconnected today. And then on the last mile side, we have 33 projects throughout the state that are connecting about 20,000 unserved locations. And so those funds are going to connect individual homes and businesses.
Madam Chair, just one final, and then I'm going to close it out. So 2 different funding streams doing the same thing. Of the 50 million, from 2017. Is there any of that left?
Senator Neal, Brian Mitchell, for the record. Let me explain, I think, how the funding came about. So the eligible applicant for E-rate funding that comes from the FCC is the school district, not the state. So the state never saw those funds. The school district. So what our role of the state was as a subject matter expert and an assistant to school districts to be able to go out and apply for those funds. They were applied for on an individual project basis, so there wasn't like one big pot of $50 million, some of which is sitting in an account somewhere, but they were applied for on an individual basis, and all of those projects that were completed previously, those are all done, and those schools are connected, and the funding went directly from the school district had a contract with their chosen internet service provider that they selected themselves, and the E-rate funding was paid by the FCC directly to the internet service provider that did the construction work.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And I believe that Assemblymember Anderson has a question.
Thank you, Chair. I actually have two questions. First, it's a comment regarding the notes. Love the notes, and thank you so much for the updates. So I wanted to ask, with the Chair's permission, if there's a way possibly for the next IFC to have an update on number 241, because this has to do with the next cohort for our Health and Human Services, more employment I believe in the healthcare workforce. So it'd be great with that new cohort to find out how many are in that cohort, if there's a way to do that for the next meeting. I'm seeing you shake your head, but I didn't know if you wanted to respond to that.
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. Yes, we can do that.
Great, so love the new notes. And then the other one has to do with a comment that you made that has to do with 225 requests for the reimbursements. So two questions for that. Are those reimbursements related to some of these, when I'm looking at like just the percentages that are really low? Like there's one that I think has a 2% done. Are those 225 requests part of those reimbursements, or like, so are percentages that are really crazy low? I'm assuming that those will then hopefully be reflected with that in the next meeting. But second of all, when is the anticipated time that you'll be able to get through all of these requests for reimbursements?
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. I will let Lisa Galloway answer these questions.
Good morning. Lisa Galloway for the record, ARPA coordinator with the Governor's Finance Office. So to answer your first question, we will, sorry, now my mind went blank and I forgot the first question.
Quite all right. It has to do with how there was one of the projects that I believe had to do with the Tahoe area that's all the way down to only 2% of the money has been utilized. So I'm wondering if that is directly related to the request for reimbursements.
It could be directly related to request for reimbursement. I would have to get back with you on that one. We also have, I think that is a CIP project, and so they were waiting for permits and some different things before they can begin construction. And then for your second question, yes, we are working through all of those 225 requests, and those all have to be finished before the close of the fiscal year, so we can close.
So if I may have a follow-up, Chair? Just going to move forward until she tells
Yes,
Thank you.
please.
Thank you. So if any of those requests for reimbursements are denied, is there I guess what I'm trying to visualize in my mind, will we have enough time then to be able to reallocate it before it has to be reallocated with that deadline of, what date is that? I want to say it's December 2025. Is there a plan to make sure that we have time to be able to both reallocate and get that approval in time so we don't lose that money?
Just to clarify, Lisa Galloway for the record, just to clarify, when we get the requests for reimbursement from the agencies, we go back and forth with the agencies, hey, you're missing a document, or this amount doesn't add up. And so we work with them until that reimbursement is good. So there is no de-obligation because of that.
Great. Thank you so much for that clarification, because I have visions of you guys at December 31st, 11:58. How do we get this money? So thank you so much for that clarification, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions from the committee? All right, thank you very much. I think that we are done with this agenda item, and we appreciate you all being here today. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Thorley, and he will go over the items on lists F, G, K, and N that will be pulled. And some of you will get to excuse yourself. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wayne Thorley for the record, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. As the chair mentioned, I will go over the items on list F, G, K, and N that have been identified to be pulled for additional discussion. Starting with list F, which is the ARPA work programs, there's only one, and that item has not been identified to be pulled for discussion. Moving on to list G, starting on the first page, G5, Department of Education, Office of Early Learning and Development, that has been identified to be pulled for discussion. Then moving on to page 2, agenda item G7, Department of Education, Account for State Special Education Services, that will be pulled for additional discussion. Next on page 3, agenda item G14, I just wanted to note for the committee that the backup materials for this work program were revised after the packet, the printed packet that's at your desk at the dais was published. The online materials, the online packet has been updated and has the correct backup information. So if you're looking at your printed handouts at the desk, there is a supplemental information there regarding 14. That has not been identified to be pulled for discussion, but just wanted to provide that information for the members. Next on page 4, agenda item G18, Department of Human Services, Aging and Disability Services Division, the Rural Regional Center. This has been identified to be pulled for discussion. This work program relates to agenda item G28 and K4. So these 3 items will be pulled and heard together. Again, that's G18, G28, and K4. Staying on page 4, agenda item G21, Department of Human Services, Aging and Disability Services Division, Home and Community-Based Services. That has been identified to be pulled and have a discussion. Moving on to page 5, agenda item G25 received a revision after the agenda was posted. So I wanted to provide an update on that. The revision is a transfer of, instead of 400,000, it's 430,000 from the professional services category. And then a transfer of, instead of 1,350,081. Again, that's $1,350,081 from the family support respite category. That item has not been identified to be pulled for discussion, but wanted to note the revision for the committee when the motion is made. Agenda item G28, staying on page 5, Department of Human Services, Aging and Disability Services Division, Desert Regional Center. Again, that will be heard with G18 and K4. Moving on to page 6, Agenda Item G.31, Department of Human Services, Division of Public and Behavioral Health, Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services. This item will be heard jointly with G.34 and I.3A and I.3B. So those 4 items will be heard together. Moving on to page 37, G34, Department of Human Services, DPBH, SNAMS. This will, as I just mentioned, will be heard with G31, I3A, and I3B. On to page 8, Agenda Item G41, Department of Human Services, Division of Social Services, their administration budget. This agenda item will be heard jointly with Agenda Item K.5. Then skipping ahead a few pages to page 12. Agenda items G62, G63, and G64, all related to the Department of Corrections, have been withdrawn. They were withdrawn yesterday, which was after the agenda had been posted, so that's not reflected on the list. But G62, 63, and 64 have been withdrawn and will not be considered. Moving on to page 13, agenda items G67 and G70, same thing. They're from the Department of Corrections. Those have been withdrawn, were withdrawn after the agenda was posted, so it's not reflected on the list, but they will not be considered. On to page 15 of list G. Item G80, State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Division of Forestry, their administration budget, that will be heard. And then staying on the same page, G81, DCNR, Nevada Natural Heritage, that will also be heard. On to page 17. Agenda item G.94 was added after the packet was printed. So if you're looking at your printed packet, you won't see that in there, but the materials are on the online packet, and there's a separate handout at your desk. Same thing with G.95. They were added after the printed packet was printed. But there's a separate handout at your desk, and the materials are in the online packet. G94 and 95 have not been identified to be pulled for discussion, but I wanted to note where the information could be found for the members. That's it for list G. On to list K. As I previously noted, agenda item K4 will be heard with G18 and G28. And agenda item K5 will be heard with G41. And then lastly, regarding agenda item K6, I wanted to note that the amount was revised after the packet was printed. The revised amount is correct on the agenda and online. But if you're looking at your printed packet, it does not have the revised amount, and a separate handout has been provided. That's it for list K. And then list N, the informational items list. There are no items on this list that have been identified to be pulled for discussion. And that concludes those items that have been identified to be pulled for discussion, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And members, any additional items? Assembly Member Hafen.
Thank you, Chair. On G14, I just wanted to disclose that I do operate a regulated utility company subject to the mill tax that is being proposed, being that it is affecting all utilities. I will vote in it, but I did want to just disclose and put that on the record. Thank you.
All right, not seeing any others. Senator Canizaro. You are making a motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to approve everything that has not been listed on these items to be pulled for additional discussion.
Thank you very much. And second from Assemblymember Monroe Moreno. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. And thank you very much. And we'll allow just a few minutes for some of our folks to exit if they need to. Okay, we are going to start with G5, the Department of Education. So if our Office of, they are here. And please go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, Michael Mitchell, Office of Early Learning and Development.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, thank you. We have two coming to the desk here in the north, and I was the one that asked to have that pulled. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you for your patience while we got our notes together. Deputy Superintendent Megan Peterson, Nevada Department of Education, for the record. Before you today, item G5 amends the allocation that the department received from the federal government for the PDG preschool development grant for the amount of $8.5 million, adding to that funding. The grant is set to expire at the end of December, and we do have plans and contracts that have been identified to receive this funding in order to spend those dollars down. And we are available for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. And with that, do we have any questions, Senator Titus?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for being here, both in Las Vegas and up here in the north. This last summer, just in the last couple of weeks, I've done a lot of rural traveling to my rural districts, and one of the consistent questions I have and concerns, whether it's Esmeralda County, Nye County, Churchill County, Mineral County, et cetera, is preschool, early development, childhood development. And I'm just wondering where these monies are being spent. I looked at what you added, the information and how these grants have been spent. And in your documentation, you said you've had over $30 million for pre-K, early development learning, but I'm not seeing that in the rural area, and I couldn't see it anywhere in your documentation how many students how many kiddos have actually benefited from this.
Megan Peterson, for the record. I'd like to phone my friend in Las Vegas, Director Michael Mitchell, to provide some additional details for you on that.
Go ahead, Mr. Mitchell.
Hello, Michael Mitchell for the record. So this PDG plan is done primarily to build out the capacity for pre-K in our state. As you may be aware, the Office of Early Learning and Development, the mission of our office is to have universal pre-K. Obviously, rurals are a big part of that. We're working often to increase those seats. However, the state-funded seats will come from Nevada Ready Pre-K 2709. This is more to build capacity, so you'll see projects such as P3 development, so best practices, things like aligning pre-K and K transitions, supporting KEA in the classroom. That being said, there are a small amount of family child care seats which are available. Obviously, as we talk to our rurals, one of the big issues is not only the lack of availability of state-funded seats in school districts, but also the lack of child care facilities that are available. And so our goal and our vision in this PDG is to actually build up the workforce capacity and infrastructure so that we are able to have the staff hired. In terms of seats for rurals, it's really using that NRPK. Obviously, this biennium, it was funded at a higher amount than it ever has in the past. So we're seeing those increases. We've also, we met with Nye County yesterday to talk about increasing that next year. So those conversations and dialogues are definitely happening. PDG also supports the West Ed research that is giving us a pathway to UPK. One of the big parts of that research is the cost of programming in rural and expansion needs. And we would be happy to bring that back and share that as well.
Sorry, follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
So that didn't really answer my question. You didn't really tell me for the $30 million that now will have been invested, how many children have we actually reached, number one? And number two, what I'm hearing from you saying is that all this money is still going to studies, capacity, expansion, but is it really touching kids?
Yes, Michael Mitchell for the record. I would have to pull basically our impact report and bring that back, and I would happy to do that to get individual numbers on child by child. However, if you consider the kindergarten entry assessment, that will impact every kindergarten child that's in the public school in the state of Nevada. Some other things we worked on, for example, the homelessness app will help families that are facing home insecurity to be able to apply and find resources and supports in order to enroll into pre-K programs. We've worked with many of our early childhood champions within the community, such as the United Way and Nevada to support these things, early learning insights to support the training of centers. And so I don't have an exact number for you. It impacted, X number of children, but we can pull those impact reports. At the closeout of the grant this year, that is something that goes to the federal government and something that we can share across here as well. But if we look at things, if we look at these projects individually, the whole goal is to ultimately support the state capacity to meet the need of all pre-K students in our state.
So thank you for that. And so what I'm hearing is that number one, you don't have the numbers yet. Number two, it would be good when you get the numbers to know how many actual, what are we lacking in that capacity? If you look at the number of kids in Nevada below the age of 5, what do we really need? So hopefully we'll see some more data when you get this information. But I'm concerned the $30 million total that you've received for this, what has it really done to help our kids? So thank you, Madam Chair, for the questions.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions on this item? All right, with that, I'll accept a motion.
So move to approve. So move to approve, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Canizero, second by Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. And any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, with that, we will move on to G7, which is also Department of Ed. Thank you, Ms. Peterson.
Good morning, Deputy Superintendent Megan Peterson for the record. Item G7 requests a transfer of $4.7 million from the reserve category to meet the targeted allocations that were identified during the legislative session that just concluded on June 2nd. The intent of these additional dollars was to be allocated to school districts and the Charter School Authority in order to assist in bringing up their general funding in alignment with the targeted multiplier of 0.46. We have worked with the fiscal staff of LCB to meet that legislative intent and can confirm that 2 of the 4 districts are now at that 0.46 level, Lyon as a school district and the Davidson Academy. Additionally targeted were Clark and the Charter School Authority. They are higher than they were originally. Clark County at 0.43, they are now at 0.44 of the weighted multiplier. And the State Public Charter School Authority was at 0.39, they are now at 0.40. Due to enrollment growth within the IEP counts, we weren't quite able to reach that target of the 0.46 with the available funds. But this gets us closer, and we are requesting approval to make those targeted allocations. And we are available for any additional questions.
Thank you very much. Can you have a little further discussion about the ramifications of the multiplier for the Clark County School District and charter schools being less than the statewide multiplier of 0.46?
Megan Peterson for the record. The impacts relate to the fact that the per pupil amount that is made available to those districts will be slightly less than the 0.46 off of the statewide base per pupil amount. For this coming biennium, that is the 9416. And so instead of being at that, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get that amount for you on my page here. So instead of being at about 4,300 per pupil, they are going to be closer to, Clark County is 3,900 and the charter schools will be at 3,800. This is a challenge from year to year with the enrollment growth that continues to be an issue in terms of keeping pace and maintaining that same level through maintenance of effort. So they are funded on a per pupil basis at a slightly lower amount. I'm sorry, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, and this may be some of the same information, but can you give me a little bit more overview of the methodology utilized to determine that amount of funding to be distributed as targeted funding to those local school districts?
Yes, Megan Peterson for the record. So to help with my clarification on that, I'm going to back up a little bit and go to the components that we have used since 2017 to allocate these funds. And so one of the things that we take into account when making these determinations is the maintenance of effort requirement that our school districts have for special education funding with the Individuals with Disabilities Act, IDEA. And so both the state and school districts and charter schools have a requirement to maintain that same level of funding each year. So we start by maintaining that each year, and once we've backed that amount out of the allocation that's made, any of those remaining funds are then distributed on a per pupil basis within that remaining funding to those school districts and charter schools who have enrollment growth. Because of maintenance of state fiscal support requirements, the funding that is allocated at the state level isn't frequently sufficient enough to maintain that same level of funding with the enrollment growth that we see with IEPs. And so there is a little bit of a dilution that occurs with the maintenance of effort and trying to maintain the enrollment growth, that when an individual LEA grows at a faster pace than their counterpart, there is a reduction just by virtue of the per pupil calculation that has been compounded for 4 of our LEA's charter schools to date. So it's a challenge of the funding that is available and the total number of kids that are being served individually.
Okay, thank you. I understand the issue is sort of with the way the funding formula came full circle. Am I correct?
That is correct.
That was just my verbiage, but thank you very much. All right. Additional questions from the committee here in Las Vegas or in Carson City? Okay, I hear none. Thank you very much. All right, with that, I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Monroe Moreno. Second from Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And we will move on to G18, which will be heard with G28 and K4.
Good morning. My name is Anil Manocha, ANILMANOCHA. I'm the Administrative Services Officer with Aging and Disability Services Division. With me today we have Jessica Adam, Deputy Administrator, and we have also our colleagues in Vegas to present the companion work program. So this work program number C76509, requesting the transfer of general fund appropriations from the Rural Regional Center budget account 3167 to the Desert Regional Center budget account 3279 to fund a projected shortfall in 3279 account for fiscal year 2025. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. And this was a pulled item. Senator Titus, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me a question. Thank you for being here today. I looked at your explanation of how you were paying for this, and I worry when you're pulling resources from the rural areas and moving money to another area. And I was wondering about the services. So when I did my homework and looked at your documentation, apparently there was money left over, and the rural centers could handle this transfer. My concern is it a one-time shot to kind of a backfill? What are you going to do in the future? How have you fixed it? Because I worry that if you take any more money from the rural services, which are already down to begin with, how are we going to sustain this?
Jessica Adams, Deputy Administrator for the record. This particular transfer was a result, we had to ask last session for a supplemental appropriation to keep services going. We a little bit over asked for that in Rural Regional Center and a little bit under asked for it in Desert Regional Center. So this is not going to be an ongoing issue. We did not cut any services from Rural Regional Center. We're going to keep all of those services going. They do have separate budgets, so that this didn't take away services from the rural areas to fund services in the South.
I'll follow up if I might, Madam Chair. I appreciate that explanation that no services will be cut, but how will this be enough to cover the need for the desert facility? And because this is kind of a one-time shot, so is it budget out for you?
If I could ask Gary in the South to answer that one.
Yes, Gary Winder.
Make sure your microphone's on. There you go.
Okay.
And maybe get a little closer. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. Gary Winder, Administrative Services Officer for Desert Regional Center, GARYWINDER. We don't anticipate that this will impact anything in FY26. This shortfall is in FY25 due to rate increases that we experienced in April of 24. And so this will be offer contingency funds that will allow us to pay any and all STEL claims that we anticipate will come in between now and the next number of months. So we don't anticipate that this will impact FY26.
Thank you for that. And Madam Chair, if there's no other questions, I'm ready to move to approve of this item.
Thank you very much. We do have another question. Assembly Member Brown May.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question relative to this. I understand that we're just covering a budget shortfall, but do we have a waiting list for services? Is this projected to be an ongoing issue as we continue to try to serve folks in these residential settings?
Jessica Adams for the record. Yes, there are waiting lists for all of our services across all regional centers. As far as there being shortfalls for the FY26 fiscal year, as Mr. Winder just said, I do not anticipate having shortfalls for people currently in services. I, at this point, do not know how many people will be able to add into services. I do anticipate we'll have a wait list throughout the fiscal year 26 and 27.
Thank you. One follow-up, Chair. Thank you. I'm just curious to know if you have the data relative to the size of the wait list that you could potentially share with us, just so we know what the impacts are across the state.
Jessica Adams for the record. Yes, we can certainly provide current wait list numbers.
Thank you very much. And seeing no more questions, I'll accept a motion from
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Titus, second from Assembly Member Monroe Moreno. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And with that, we'll move on to G21, Aging and Disability Services. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Cheyenne Pasquale, Pasquale, with Nevada Aging and Disability Services. This is for work program number C76038. And this work program requests a transfer from the personnel services and reserve categories to the taxi assistance program category to realign funds to mitigate the impact on service delivery as a result of a budget reduction. I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. And I believe that we do have some questions. Senator Taylor, did you have a question?
I did. As I was typing to send out the reminder, I did want to ask my question. So thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions, if that's okay with you.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for coming forward. Just a couple of questions. You talked the information, the background information we have, just talked about the need to make some adjustments based upon the funding reductions that are there, and it also talked about that the division is making some efforts to adjust the taxi assistance program in light of those reductions. Can you give us a little bit of an update on what those might look like, including your ability to connect individuals who now won't have that assistance, to connect them with other available resources for transportation?
Thank you, Cheyenne Pasquale for the record. So with this budget reduction, we did a couple of different things. First, we looked at our existing caseload and the utilization of the program. At the beginning of June, there were approximately 500 individuals that were approved for services, but only about 189 individuals were actively participating in the program, meaning that they were coming to purchase coupon books. Based on the reduction in funding, we did take clients that were not utilizing the program off services. And then we also had to further reduce some of those that were actively participating in the program. So currently we have about 154 active individuals participating in the program. And this work program will allow us to continue that 154 through state fiscal year 2026. We also we looked at clients that are only in tier 1, which are the most in need for services. Our existing team member is supporting those individuals that were released from the program in finding alternative transportation services. We know that transportation services are one of the highest needs, both here in our valley and across the state. So we continue to work with community partners, other providers, et cetera, to be able to expand those services, but it can be an ongoing challenge.
If I may follow up on that, and thank you for that. And I did see those numbers and the unfortunate reductions that were necessary. You said that they're an ongoing challenge. I guess my question really was surrounding, so does that mean you've been able to connect them with other available resources or not? Just kind of wanted to check in. I know the plan was to try to connect them because we weren't able to cover all of the 189, about 30, 35 folks or so. Have you been able to connect them, or you really just can't because of those challenges? I just wanted a little bit more. What's the update? Is that a little more clear?
Yes, Cheyenne Pasquale for the record. We have been able to connect individuals with transportation services. Sometimes it is a bit more limited in terms of having to prioritize the type of transportation that you can connect with. So maybe an individual is looking for transportation for going to medical appointments or to do their grocery shopping, and also to be able to participate in social activities, et cetera. A lot of transportation services will be limited to those social determinants of health. And so while we may not be able to fully meet transportation needs, we have been able to prioritize some of those most critical transportation needs.
Okay, thank you for that. That's the kind of detail I was looking for. So thank you. They're getting to those medical appointments and so on, but maybe not some of the other important, but certainly less important social activities. Also, and thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence. I know that I applaud your efforts to reassign the position so that person, there's a vacancy, you're reassigning that person. And so I applaud that. We certainly don't want people to lose their jobs. What kind of impact do you anticipate going from 2 people to 1? What kind of impact do you anticipate that may have on the taxi assistance program?
This is Cheyenne Pasquale for the record. Based on the current caseload, 1 individual is able to support the day-to-day assistance to the recipients. We do anticipate that there will be a further reduction in services in state fiscal year 25 to about a caseload of 80. So, and then we also utilize other team members to help support some of the administrative functions that are not paid under this revenue source.
So it seems as though you feel confident then that the support for the program won't be impacted as much. How about support on for the participants in the program? What kind of impact on them do you anticipate?
Cheyenne Pasquale for the record. Currently, our 1 AA is able to support the day-to-day needs of the clients on the program.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if I may, this is a challenge, and I know staff is doing all that they can to work on this. I would, if this would be appropriate time to recommend that we get an update the end of the fiscal June 2026 on the status of the program and the agency's plans going forward, just regarding the feasibility of continuation of the program under this current funding structure. So if that would, I don't know if this means I'm making the motion to that regard, but I would certainly think a report back in would be appropriate.
Thank you very much, and we'll take note of that. Thank you so much. And with that, I believe Senator Neal has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to be clear. So you're thinking that you're no longer going to offer the taxi assistance program? I need to hear that.
Cheyenne Pasquale for the record. We will continue to work with the Taxi Cab Authority to look at the revenues that they're bringing, because this is 100% funded by the Taxi Cab Authority and their revenues. And so we have to continue to work with them, but the revenues have been declining over time.
So has the actual department considered, looking at the TNC revenue to try to figure out for the 26th session, you bring some kind of BDR that at least goes after supplementing with the TNC revenue, since the taxi cab revenue is dwindling, so that the service is at least still available, being that transportation is still a significant challenge generally for the senior population. The reality is, right, folks are using Lyft, Uber. That's the reality. TNC revenue is still coming into the state in a much higher amount. And so I'm just wondering, why aren't you considering actual solutions related to that revenue versus a just complete dismantling of a transportation program?
This is Cheyenne Pasquale for the record. We have been exploring a number of different options. I personally am not familiar with the TNC, but we'll be looking into that.
So I'll just break it down. Let me not use acronyms. Transportation network. Basically, it is the revenue that, I don't know if we did it in 2019, but it is a revenue stream that we receive from all of the alt transportation, such as Lyft, Uber, etc. Right? So that money comes into the state. If you want an additional reference, just go to the revenue reference manual. But it is revenue that we are getting because we moved to an alt economy, right? And so there's two things happening.
Cheyenne Pasquale for the record, thank you. One of the things to consider is this program specifically allows individuals to buy coupons to use with the taxi cab companies. And so any other revenues, such as revenue from the rideshare companies, would not necessarily maybe be able to be used for that, but it may result in a different type of program.
Madam Chair, just quick follow-up. Just, and I'm going to leave this alone. They do offer, it's not in the form of a coupon, Groupon, but they have a way for you to pay for rides for other people. Why? How do I know this? Because we've done it for conferences, right? Where we do 200 and say that 200 folks are going to take a lift from an event because we don't want them drinking and drunk. So it's available and it's out there. I just think it's something for you to explore and something for you to consider for 2026. So if you need additional information, I'm willing to share. There's, because maybe you should just talk to these companies directly and learn what they offer in terms of programmatic structures. And that is it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Do we have additional questions or comments up north? All right, with that, I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Monroe Moreno, second by Senator Canizero. All those, any discussion?
And Madam Chair, my motion would include the report that was mentioned by Senator Taylor.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Monroe Moreno, and the second by Senator Canizero. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you very much. We are on G31 next, and that will be heard with G34 and I3A and I3B.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Would you like a summary of all items at the same time, or would you like to go one by one this morning?
You may go ahead and do those all at once.
Okay, great. Thank you. For the record, my name's Andrea Rivers, R-I-V-E-R-S, and I serve as a Deputy Administrator for the Division of Public and Behavioral Health within the Department of Human Services. That's a new one for us. So I'm also joined today by Drew Cross, our statewide Forensic Director for the Division of Public and Behavioral Health. Item G31, Work Program 25CB 31612, is a request of general fund salary adjustment funds to cover a shortfall in the personnel category for Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services for fiscal year 25 in the amount of $103,500. G34 is a transfer from numerous budget categories for Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services in the amount of $286,034 for Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services in fiscal year 25. Agenda item I3A before you today is a request for an allocation from the IFC contingency funds pursuant to NRS 353.268 in the amount of $3,561,639. These monies are requested to a shortfall in the Personnel Services budget account for Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services. Agenda item I3B is also an IFC contingency account request pursuant to NRS 353.268 in the amount of $991,147 to fund a shortfall shortfall in personnel services for the Lakes Crossing Center budget account. We stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. And I believe Assemblymember Brown-May has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I do. I have several, if you'll indulge me. So first, there's significant transfers in our backup materials, and it looks like a large amount of overtime. Can you start just by providing an update on the final closing expenses to reconcile our FY25 for the Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services and the Lakes Crossing Center budget accounts? What's the final closing? Have we reconciled what those final closing numbers will be?
For the record, Andrea Rivers, Deputy Administrator, Division of Public and Behavioral Health. The final numbers are as demonstrated today through items G31, 34, items I3A and I3B. We would like to thank LCB and GFO for their hard work in this request to reconcile the amounts posted today and read on record to help us close for state fiscal year 25.
Thank you for that. Follow-up, Chair? Please. Thank you. So I appreciate that. And I agree there is a significant amount of work that was done in order to find those dollar amounts to have final reconciliation. So I appreciate that. There are what appears to be some factors that contribute to the budgetary shortfalls. It looks like overtime, staffing, inability to fill positions. Can you talk through what actions you're taking to limit the shortfall in this current biennium and then future? How are we addressing this issue ongoing?
Good morning, Drew Cross for the record. I'd like to speak a little bit of how the overtime is currently being utilized. Our clients are often suffering serious mental illness. They require close observation, will frequently utilize one-to-ones and other methods of close observation to assure safety and prevent any sort of sentinel type event. This is an ongoing part of our process. We've also expanded our current census. We have the largest forensic capacity to date, 264 beds statewide, and this is in an effort to mitigate sanctions and fines that have been coming out of the county courts subsequent to the forensic wait list.
Thank you for that explanation. I appreciate that. Back to the question, right? If we know that we have our census that continues to increase, and we are staffing at one-to-ones, that we are going to continue to pay overtime costs in order to meet those needs. Is there a methodology that we can put in place in order to mitigate what that expected overtime is so that we can budget better for the needs of our community?
For the record, Andrea Rivers, there is, and this could be done. We have looked at this at each biennium budget build, and the current projections and calculations have remained stagnant for a number of years through our agency request and then our governor's recommend. But this could be looked at in the future to adjust.
Thank you.
Accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. I appreciate that. I look forward to taking this offline and continuing the conversation so that we can better, I think, forecast the needs of the community and decrease the costs that are associated with overtime while better staffing. So I appreciate your work on this. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And I believe Assemblymember Monroe Moreno has a question or two.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And going through our backup documents, and this might be a question, better suited for the GFO, if the GFO is still there in the audience. It appears that there's been various issues with obtaining the accurate expenditure information from our state accounting system by the state agency staff. If the GFO's there and can better answer the question, that would be great. Could you please elaborate on those issues and the steps that the Core NV team is taking to address the issues with the accounting system? I think, I've been very leery of any computer system that we have in Core NV particularly, and it hasn't been as amazing and wonderful as we had hoped it would be. And I think these are some issues that we probably could have discussed during session, but we didn't have those discussions in the subcommittee meetings or in the joint meetings. So could you elaborate on what the issues are and the steps that the team is taking to address them?
Thank you. Tiffany Greenmeyer, Director for the Governor's Finance Office. Yes, there has been some discrepancies between Dawn and Advantage 4. We have been working through it. Payroll, there is a few issues with payroll. You know, if a payroll JVD rejects through the nightly cycle, it doesn't show accurately in Dawn, and the agency has to go in and clear out that rejection, so that reject JVD, so it will show up accurately. With that being said, you know, I just want to be clear, people are still being paid, right? Even though that JVD is rejecting through the nightly cycle. So we are addressing all those discrepancies and working with Core NV. I do have weekly calls with them to make sure that we're addressing all the rejects. Getting hold of agencies that do have outstanding rejects. Core NV is working on that. So it has been a really long process and a lot of bumps dealing with Advantage 4 and connecting it with the Dawn. I hope I answered your question.
Kind of, Madam Chair.
Please.
Thank you so much. So this is just one division of a number of departments and divisions within the state. Do we anticipate seeing shortfalls because of issues with Core NV, Dawn, Advantage 4, any of those that we're going to see at future IFCs coming before us asking for funding to shore up shortfalls? And also, as we look to close out the 2025 budget, do you anticipate any delays or problems with that, with the system with that?
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. No, we're currently reconciling Dawn and Advantage 4. So as we go through, and I did also send out direction for the state year-end closing as to what we're going to do as to reconciling between Advantage and Dawn and making sure we have the documentation as to, you know, if they're not reconciling, why, right? And can we fix it, or do we have to note the issues that are going on, and are they going to create a problem or not? So we are working through that too currently. I do not anticipate any delays. So we should be able to close by September 19th per session law.
Thank you so much for that. If you find as you work through the system and there's going to be delays, I would ask that you reach out to our fiscal staff and let them know so that they're aware of it and they can let us be aware of it, so it's not a surprise when we come back for our next IFC meeting, if that's possible.
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. Yes, no, I plan on keeping everybody informed as to what problems are happening. We did start having meetings with Core NV and LCB Fiscal, where these meetings are monthly, and this is to keep everybody abreast of all the issues that are happening and changes. So we are doing that.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Madam Chair, for the questions.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions on this particular item? All right, seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Monroe Moreno, second from Senator Canizaro. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. And we'll move on to G41, which will be heard with K5.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Committee. For the record, my name is Robert Thompson. I am the Administrator for the Division of Social Services. I am here with Deputy Administrator Kelly Cantrell, who is our Deputy over Eligibility, Service Delivery, and Policy. We are here today presenting item G41 and companion item K.5, which are work programs to transfer $244,654 from projected overages in our budget account 3232 to budget account 3228, which is administrative services. Budget account 3232 is a general fund budget account that provides assistance for certain persons that are aged, blind, and disabled. And we are here for any questions.
Thank you very much. And with that, Senator Canizaro, I believe, has some questions.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I do have a few questions, mostly because this particular work program set is, I think, relating to some additional concerns that this committee and certainly the legislature ought to have with respect to SNAP benefits and how that impacts the state. And so I have some questions that hopefully you can help us to answer. Obviously, this shortfall, as I understand it, and you can correct me if I am wrong, is related to increased operating expenses as it relates to the state's costs of participating in a federal income verification system that previously we were not assessed. We could do that, we could utilize for free, but now the state is being assessed a cost to use that system. Is that accurate?
Robert Thompson, for the record, that is accurate on what caused this specific shortfall.
And I appreciate that. I think what we are seeing, and in particular with some of the federal legislation, particularly with House Resolution number 1, or what is often referred to as the One Big Beautiful Bill, is that there are changes to how states now are going to be impacted as it relates to utilizing things like this federal verification system, and with other budget accounts that you may have that may experience shortfalls. And so can you talk to us just a little bit about those particular shortfalls in the next upcoming years, whatever those changes are to those programs that are being administered by your division, and how that is impacted by that piece of legislation?
Robert Thompson, for the record. The primary impact of the Big Beautiful Bill that was signed on July 4th was changes in the way the SNAP or food stamp program is being funded at a federal level. Historically, the federal government has paid 50% of all administrative costs for the food stamp program, with the states paying 50% of those costs. And the federal government has always paid 100% of the benefit that's been issued. Under the Big Beautiful Bill, the primary immediate change that will happen in this biennium is effective October 1st of 2026. The federal government will only be paying 25% of our administrative costs. Our administrative costs, a very estimate number, run about $100 million a year for the state of Nevada. So the federal government was projected to pay $50 million. The state of Nevada was projected to pay $50 million. In this biennium, for 9 months of the fiscal year 27, the federal government will be reducing that to 25%, which would be an estimated $19 million loss to the division this biennium.
Thank you for that. And so I want to be very clear that the state, that change between the 50-50 split to a 25-75 split, that additional 25% on the state's cost for this biennium in fiscal year FY27 is roughly $19 million extra dollars that your division will need in order to continue its operations.
Robert Thompson, for the record, that is accurate.
And then I know you mentioned that because of that impact in FY27 and the changes that come as a result of October 1st, 26, that there's that 9-month period. What do you anticipate those costs being? We've talked about the 19 million. What are those costs estimated to be going forward in future years of biennium?
Robert Thompson for the record. At this time, if our costs were to stay static going forward, with the future being equal to history, it would be approximately $50 million for the biennium, $25 million for each fiscal year, state fiscal year.
So that will be in future biennia, another 50 million over the 2-year period that we will have to find and appropriate in order to maintain current levels of service and to cover that additional 25% cost share on behalf of the state.
Robert Thompson for the record, that is accurate.
I want to ask a question, just given some of these issues, are there any delays or problems anticipated with your FY25 closing?
Robert Thompson for the record, I have been meeting with my fiscal team regularly, and we anticipate no issues closing on time.
One of the other pieces within HR1 has to do with the state's error rate, which in Nevada, we have at times been below the 6% and at times been above that 6% error rate. And as I understand it, there is a change in what the state may have to then pay and come up with those funds if we find ourselves above that 6%. And I think we're about 5.94% right now. And so can you talk to us just about that error rate and the implications of that piece of legislation as it pertains to the error rate?
Robert Thompson for the record, there is no expert in the state of Nevada with more information than Deputy Kelly Cantrell, and I'm going to let her take that.
Good morning, Kelly Cantrell for the record. Thank you for the question, Senator Canizaro. So we closed out 2024 fiscal year at a 5.94% error rate. We've hit that mark twice since 2018. Currently, we're right in the 7% range as of today, right now, with this current fiscal year. If we were to stay in the 7% range right now, you're looking at a 5% state match that we would start having to pay for the benefits that went out to the Nevada citizens. Looking back historically, that would be about a $55 million annual hit to the budget that we've never paid in the past. We are working to get that error rate under 6%, of course. But it's 5% for error rate 7.99, 6 to 7.99, and it does go up from there until you get to 10%, which is 15% of the overall allotment that goes out to our customers.
So I guess in the interplay of both of these particular issues, the error rate piece, and then of course the additional 25% of the cost, how are you anticipating managing your resources to help keep that error rate below the 6% when you're also looking to absorb an additional 25% increase in the costs on behalf of the state?
Kelly Cantrell for the record. So there's been a lot of leeway in the SNAP program that we have taken advantage of. And one of the things that we're doing is we are tightening up what we are requiring customers to do, what we're requiring our staff to do. For example, in the last 10 years, we have taken customer attestation for verification of their shelter expenses, for rent, for mortgage, for utilities, et cetera. And effective June 1 of this year, we started implementing, we needed to verify that. We have put staff back through multiple trainings, how to do budgeting again. We've implemented case reviews that we once did them after the benefits were approved and issued, and now we're doing reviews prior to approval, hoping to catch errors before they're made. We're doing a myriad of things. We were allowed to interview applications once a year and not at recertification. We've implemented interviewing with every application. So now we're interviewing twice a year instead of once a year, trying to make that contact with that customer, getting our verification in our hand. This is not an easy task, and I would like to say on the record, the state of Nevada is in great shape. We're one of the few states that actually came under 6% this year, and historically, we're 12th in the nation, and sometimes lower than that, and they just moved the goal line on us. And so we're in really good shape, but our staff know and we know we have no choice. We have to get this down. So there's a lot of things that we're trying to do to make that happen.
And I appreciate that you're trying to manage, I think, what is an exceedingly large burden to be placed on an agency that's providing resources and help to some of the most vulnerable Nevadans, making sure that kids are able to eat, making sure that families are able to provide in tough economic times. And it is a very, I think, an important thing that this state does, right, for Nevadans. But what I'm hearing is that the solution to some of this is to put more of that onus on those Nevadans who are coming to seek help because they need access to food, and to make sure that they are going to now have additional hurdles and steps to go through, while at the same time also asking all of your agency folks to take on more work and more of that burden. And that, I think, it sounds like is existing plans for your agency, irrespective of the additional amount of money that you will need in order to cover the increased costs. So I'm hoping that you can also explain to us just how it is you're going to manage, how you're going to fund that increased share for the state that begins on October 1st of 2026. And then I guess my concern is that the way in which we are managing some of this additional onus for those vulnerable Nevadans is to just ask them to hopefully do more, and then ask your staff to also do more when we also have to now find money and resources to cover just a basic portion of the state, not including what else you may need in future biennia in order to manage all of that increased workload that it sounds like you're putting on your staff.
Kelly Cantrell for the record. Senator Canzaro, you are not wrong in some of what you said, for sure. One of the things I think it's important to point out is that over 50% of Nevada's error rate is customer related, something they forget to tell us, or a piece of information that was given to us wasn't quite accurate. And so there are some things we do have to put back on them. We are doing other things. I'm going to go ahead and let Administrator Thompson take over with some of the other things that we're doing. But over 50% of our error rate is customer based.
So Robert Thompson for the record, when we start talking about how the agency is going to be able to identify and stretch our resources to be able to cover that $19 million shortfall in this biennium, we don't have a lot of flexibility or expenditures that we're able to levy. Our primary expenses are salaries, and we have worked very, very hard to reduce our vacancy rate, but we acknowledge we may have to let some of our vacancy rate increase to be able to come up with part of that money. We are scrutinizing, my office is scrutinizing every vacancy that comes forward except for case managers. Our case managers are our bread and butter, and we do need to hire them as fast as possible and get them trained, or we're not able to meet the needs of Nevadans. But we do acknowledge that we may have to put a little more responsibility on our managers and on our supervisors and on ourselves. The deputies and myself may have to be stretched a little bit more. There is not another place in an agency like ours to be able to come up with that kind of money.
And I appreciate that. I think maybe one or two, maybe a statement and a question, Madam Chair. And I think the unfortunate and very disappointing piece of this, and this is not towards either one of you, is that in order to deal with this piece of legislation from the federal government that is absolutely going to take food off the tables of kids here in Nevada, is that we are going to be in a position where, despite this legislature's efforts over the last 2 legislative sessions the last 4 years to reduce vacancy rates, to increase salaries, to make sure that we are taking care of state workers, to make sure that they can do their job. We are not only going to ask them to do more, but we're going to leave these vacancies open in order to manage part of this shortfall. What I'm also hearing, though, is that even though we are going to leave positions vacant, and even though we are not going to hire enough people to be able to manage these programs, and even though we're going to be asking yet again for our state workers to come in and do a whole bunch more work, that we are also going to be asked as a legislature to have to fund this, which means that in whatever potential conversations about upcoming potential special sessions, there's going to have to be action by this body for this biennia, for the second year, to put in that amount of money in order to make sure that we are basically compliant when, by the way, we are a state that has consistently had low error rates, that has consistently been of the sort that there are simple customer hiccups that need to be addressed in order to solve that vacancy rate, where we are not folks who are defrauding any sort of governmental agency, where we don't have Nevadans who are trying to find like food to feed their kids, that we are going to now be asked for us as a state to not only bear that burden in a way that becomes untenable, because at the end of the day, we are going to be taking away services from the most needy Nevadans, but that we as a legislature are now going to have to go find $19 million in order to make sure that these programs stay afloat for a state that has been doing its job and doing it well. And that in future biennia, we are going to have to find $50 million every single session to continue these programs. I do not understand and cannot understand, and this is probably more of a comment, Madam Chair, but I cannot understand how any of this makes any sort of sense. We are talking about feeding families, and to me, we are doing it well, but we are still in a position where we're going to have to cut back services, where we are going to have to take that food from those families, and where we're going to have to come up with additional money because of this federal piece of legislation. And I just, for the life of me, cannot understand the wisdom in that. That's probably more of a statement than a question, but thank you both for being here. And I hope that my colleagues understand that this is just one piece, I think, of what we will have to do to come up with an actual plan for how it is we're going to address all of these issues, because the plan cannot continue to be leave state positions vacant, ask state workers to do more, take food from Nevada families, and ask this body to yet again come up with additional funds just so that we can continue to do the same job that we have been doing and doing well. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And with that, I believe,
Madam Chair.
Senator,
Oh, sorry.
yes,
I
believe Senator.
If there was somebody up
Neil
in
has
the
a
south
question.
that had a question, I do have a question down here.
All right, I will get to you in just a minute,
Thank you.
please. Senator Neal's been waiting. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a couple of questions, but they overlap with each other. So now that we're paying to use the federal system, are there charges that the state has to consider now that the able-bodied requirement has changed? So there's two parts to the one big, we can call it beautiful or we can call it ugly, bill that moved. They changed the dependents. So now a dependent is anyone under the age of 14. So if now a dependent is not someone who's under 18, but actually under the age of 14, is the system making you have to do some additional tweaks or changes in the reporting for now a family that is saying, I have a 15-year-old, I'm on SNAP, but I'm not, now this kid is considered not a dependent. Are you having to make some other administrative adjustments internally on how you report that?
Thank you, Senator Neal. Kelly Cantrell for the record. Yes, ma'am, we are going to have to make internal changes for that. They did change the child age to under 14, as you stated, so that will cause individuals as children from 14 to 18 to now be able-bodied adults without dependents. They also increased the age from 18 to 54 to 18 to 64. So that is another portion of the population from 54 to 64 that will be considered able-bodied adults without dependents when this goes into effect, that are also currently not in that system, and we will have to make system adjustments for that. There is a tiny, tiny silver lining here, and that's that Nevada is under a waiver for the able-bodied adults without dependents. That waiver does last through January 30th of 2026, and then we will have to put these into effect unless we were granted an additional year for the waiver, which we do not anticipate receiving at this time.
Thank you for that. So is there because for 26, you need to plan for what that cost is going to be. And I guess what I was wondering, because it's just odd that a 14-year-old, a child under 14 is now dependent, and then a 15-year-old, is considered a dependent, and then a 15-year-old is considered somewhat in this weird space of adulthood, which we know they're in 8th grade. And so it's confusing for me because I'm wondering what are we contemplating in terms of the supports? Because when I was looking at error rate can also be underpayment, right? So an individual that is now, let's say 15 on TANF foster, you now staff have to go and educate this population, change messaging, change flyers, change community approach to now help them understand how they are now being brought into a system where they weren't traditionally in that system. And the same thing would apply for a person that is now 59 to 64 years of age, which are our seniors that are now saying, wait, so I need my food stamps, and now you're saying I have to go to work, and educating them, a 63-year-old person, educating them on how they need to figure out how to get some work hours so they can have food. So what are the costs that are going to be associated with that now community engagement, that community outreach, the flyer that now has to go into with the community partners to help them now understand, here are your requirements, and we need to prepare you for the end of 26, that this is going to hit you hard, and get them ready that, food on the table now is equated to your ability to go to work at 63 years of age. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, that's a serious thing, because I'm constantly sending referrals to you guys, and you guys are hitting the ground hard and doing really good work. But, for someone who's a grandmother at 63 saying, I got to figure out how to get some hours so I can keep food on the table, is going to be a significant change in Nevada. The point blank. So that's more, it was a question, but some commentary in there. But if you could address like how you're going to deal with this change, because I know it's going to hurt my district, and it should hurt the rurals too.
Thank you, Senator Neal. Kelly Cantrell for the record. In full transparency, ABOD, or able-bodied adult without dependents, putting this back into effect in Nevada is a heavy lift. Nevada has not had to participate in this in well over a decade because of the waiver that we have had. So we have an entire group of staff who have never done this before. It is a complex program to put into effect. Luckily, one of the things that we do well at DSS is work requirements, work programs. We've got several branches through SNAP employment and training. We have workforce services and development unit that can help with that. and we know that they're going to have to take on a big piece of this. Our staff are going to have to go through extensive training later this year that's already being created and worked on to get staff up to par to even be able to understand this program. And the changes, the ones that have done it, it's not the same program a decade ago that it is today. So it is a heavy lift. The cost analysis, we have not even begun to scratch the surface on that yet. We have a lot of things in place that will help us. We do work heavily with community partners, Dieter and other WIOA individuals like that we can also use as referral resources. But this is going to be a heavy lift for our agency.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. Senator Titus, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity, and thank you for being here today. And first, a comment, since apparently we've been allowed a lot of comments here. I really appreciate that you as a department have said, here's what we have. It is a big lift, but this is what we're going to do. And I think that go-forward attitude is appropriate and needed, recognizing that there's something new in Washington and different accountability in the last 10 years. And so thank you for that. I have a question regarding a comment earlier about literally taking food off the table, though. We're not taking anybody's food away from them, correct?
Kelly Cantrell for the record. In our analysis that we have done, there are over 131,000 individuals that do run the risk of losing SNAP benefits based on a lot of the new rules that are in that bill. Able-bodied adults without dependents is one of them. There are also, I want to say 10,000 or more individuals that could lose benefits based on changes in non-citizen folks that are here under certain statuses are going to lose eligibility across the board, depending on the status. There's a lot of them.
Thank you for that clarification, because what you're saying is that they may lose eligibility, but we're not going into anybody's home and taking away food, correct?
We don't do that, no, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And then with this changes and the potential that the SNAP benefits, people will lose some of those benefits, that's different than actually losing food. Recognizing there's going to be changes here, have you changed the relationship that you have with Food Bank and some of these other agencies that help with this? Because I've looked a lot about food insecurity, and it's real. I mean, there is food insecurity in our nation and in our state. And when I've talked to the folks, say from the Northern Nevada Food Bank and all, I mean, they're kind of gearing up with some of this. And I'm just wondering what relationship you have with those agencies, because it seems like you're going to need them even more.
Kelly Cantrell for the record. Yes, Senator Titus, we have a very good relationship with Food Bank of Northern Nevada and 3 Square in the South, and most all of the smaller food banks throughout our areas. We do work closely with them. We are working on referrals, tightening up our referral ability to refer folks over to the food banks. Community partners, we're in every aspect, as you know, through our outreach program. And so if there's a way to help, we are engaging our community partners, and we are actively working with food banks.
Thank you for that, because I think that's going to be even more important than ever, is to making sure that we have those good alliances and making sure that really we do help so that folks don't go hungry in our state. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question.
Thank you very much. I would like to go to Assembly Member Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Senator Titus, for pointing out the fact that we have a number of nonprofits doing really amazing work in our community. But I want to also remind every member of this committee, we're also seeing cuts in grants and funding to those nonprofits that are doing work. So not only are the big, beautiful bill going to affect the ability of the state and having the state have to come up with more money, or we might not be going into people's home and taking foods off their table and out of their refrigerator. This will limit the amount of food that can go into those homes. And I too toured the state, the entire state, all 17 counties, and talked to families throughout the state about housing and food insecurities. And yesterday was at a store here in North Las Vegas that also, it's a store and a food bank, and had a discussion of how their resources are limited of what's coming into those food banks. So those families that may be losing some of their SNAP benefits may also be losing access to food through those food banks because of effects coming out of DC. Just want to make sure that everyone is aware of how this is going to affect families across the board in our state. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember, for that clarification, because I think when we get into semantics and we want to say nobody's going into someone's home to get their food, if I can't myself go to the store and put food on my table for any reason, whatever it is, there's not food on my table. So let's not get too in the weeds about semantics and who we're feeding and who we're not. And I'm assuming that everybody will be happy to vote for that, $2 million per month when we get ready to do it, or whatever it's going to be. All right, with that, I believe Assemblymember Mosca had a comment.
Thank you, Chair. I had a general question. I just wanted to say, as someone who grew up on food stamps, I do know losing benefits is losing food. So I just wanted to make sure I said that. But Administrator Thompson and Deputy Administrator Cantrell, it's so good to see you. I had a general question for your office. I know Deputy Administrator Swearengin is not there, but I wanted to ask it because it is something that I'm hearing from community members and constituents. So just wanted to know if you could give a general overview of how the direct certification for childcare is going, especially with school starting this week.
So we do have Deputy Swearengin in the audience with us, and she'll be glad to come to the microphone and give you an update.
Thank you so much.
And see. So it's still good morning. For the record, Lisa Swearengin, Deputy Administrator with the Division of Social Services. And I'm so sorry, could you please repeat your question?
Yes, thank you so much. Glad to see you. Could you just talk about how the direct certification is going, knowing that Urban Lake no longer exists as the middleman for child care subsidies to folks in Nevada, and how that's going with DWIS directly now giving payments or being in that space?
Thank you for the question. So for the record, again, Lisa Swearengin, Deputy Administrator with the Division of Social Services. So things are going really well. We have pulled all of the eligibility functions, payments to providers from Urban League. That went into effect. They closed, everything was transferred over effective June 30th. I didn't bring any actual numbers with me. We are turning those payments around to providers within 14 days. Originally, they were, I want to say 30, 60, sometimes 90 days out to those providers. So we have seen a lot of improvement there. We have been really pushing, trying to get a new system in place. We are currently out for an RFP, which will streamline that. Right now, we're working with an antiquated system. We've been making some updates to that so that we can make it easier to get the timesheets entered, get those payments turned around, putting a little bit, working with the parents as well as the providers. I know recently, I think it aired yesterday, I think I was on the news, just kind of talking a little bit about parents and the communication going with those parents, and just making sure that everybody knows that even though it appears that, I think the term was that we have a backlog of applications. That is not the case. We have an issue with receiving numerous requests because they're not, I guess they're nervous, right? They had that office that they could walk into, and we are working on building that out for parents as well so that they could have that one-on-one communication. But they are going into a single mailbox and everything is going in there. And unfortunately, our state system, when you start getting numerous emails from one individual, it flags it as spam and it throws it into this lovely little system that we don't always get notification on that it's sitting there for a while. But overall, we are doing really well. I think the turnaround time is it's within the timeframes that we have. I think we're trying to get things addressed within 10 days. Right now, knowing that our biggest population are our TANF applicants, and I think we're getting ready to put a team together to kind of address some of those applications so that we can make sure that those get turned around timely. But overall, it's going really well.
Follow up, please, Chair. Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank you for that. And I think the more that we can talk about it publicly on the record, the more that Nevadans can understand that the system of how they were getting their benefits before has changed, and that everything that you just shared is the reason why there may be a perceived backlog in what's happening. And I'm sure I will continue to refer people to your offices so they can get their support. And thank you so much for that update.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments here? Anyone in Carson City, additional comments? All right, with that, I will accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Monroe Moreno, second by Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on this? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. And with that, we will move on to G81. 880. Sorry, I jumped ahead. G80.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Casey for the record, State Forester Fire Warden for the Nevada Division of Forestry. I'm here today asking for $5 million in authority to begin spending a new grant into the division from the U.S. Forest Service. It is the Multi-Event Disaster Assistance Grant. It's our first time receiving these funds. And just to give you a little bit of background, it's a $25.5 million grant given to us primarily for the Sierra and Elko fronts. It was kind of tying into our shared stewardship program. That's the nexus of how we got here. And tying into all the federal money, we have leveraged about $117 million of federal funds, primarily for treatments on federal lands to reduce wildfire risk. So this money was meant to kind of tie into that on state and private lands in and adjacent. We have multiple projects up under here. One is the update of community wildfire protection plans. That's what kind of drives what the community's doing in these areas in both the Sierra and Elko fronts. And then we have over 13,000 acres of projects also tied into this funding in Mount Rose, Genoa, Lake Tahoe, Clear Creek, Elko, Osino Ranch, the Rubies, Spring Creek, Maggie Creek, and the list goes on. There's a large number of projects that have been designated. I think one of the things to recognize here is, I've talked to a lot of you about our shared stewardship program. I didn't make up these projects. These come to us from the ground. So just a reminder how our Nevada Shared Stewardship program works and agreement works. This is a partnership between the state and federal agencies at the agreement level, because all we have control over is our staff and making them work differently. But this goes from an executive committee level who's providing some oversight to this. We have a technical advisory committee. It's all the state and federal agencies that are in the signatory boxes. And then it tiers all the way down to the ground, where the ground levels, including landowners, NGOs, anyone, industry, all of the people. And the ground level is providing us 5-year plans of work for the priority areas that we designated. So all of the projects in this list are designated to us from those work groups all the way up, approved by the executive committee. This ties into the $6 million given to us graciously by you all and signed by the governor in AB 578, the $6 million for shared stewardship. Our hope with those funds, we're going to look at the priority projects still in the queue. We have about $70 million of projects across the state in the 13 landscapes. And our hope is to kind of focus those efforts on the landscapes that haven't seen the amount of funding that the Sierra and Elko fronts have seen through these programs. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And I believe Assemblymember Mosca has a question.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much for that pretty detailed overview. You did answer my questions around what was the overview of the project as well as the location, so I appreciate that. But was hoping you could talk about any of the priority projects that are going to begin in FY 2026.
Thank you for the question. And again, for the record, Casey. I don't know off the top of my head which projects. What we did was we had submitted this about over 2 years ago. The ones that went into the priority group were the ones that were ready to be implemented most immediately. We had landowners contacted and they have signed off that we can come in and do this work. So I could get you a list of the priorities that went into the $5 million that we asked for this year. Our hope is that we overshoot that target, but we do have other grant funding. So I could get you a list of the priority projects that went into the $5 million, if that would help.
Yes, thank you. It'd be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Additional questions, comments on this particular item? I'm sorry, Senator Steinbeck. I have the hardest time calling you Senator. I want to call you Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Question that I had on it, what's the performance period and is there a match? And then also, are you utilizing current staff for these projects or are you going to have to contract this out or hire additional staff?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Again, for the record, Casey, I think I got all the questions. So I might go backward and then you might have to repeat. But there is no match on this particularly, but we did actually show some leverage. We have some areas of leverage in the grant on this particular one. As far as staffing, originally when we submitted this over 2 years ago, we were looking at some staffing put into the Division of Forestry. However, we don't want to do that. It's a one-time grant, we think. So we are going to contract all of this work. We have between state, our crews and hand crews, the federal governments, our local government hand crews, and all of the contractors that we have listed on the good of the state contract through purchasing. We plan to contract all of this work out. Did I miss something in the question?
Just the performance period.
Oh, thank you. Again, for the record, Casey, the performance period is 5 years.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you. All right. Any additional questions, comments on this particular item? Up north? Not hearing any. I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Monroe Moreno. Second from Senator Canizaro. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And we will move on to G81. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Jamie McClinton. I'm the administrator for the Nevada Division of Natural Heritage, JAMEYMCCLINTON. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Can you give us a little bit of an overview, please?
Yes, so the item that we're here for today is a request to delete some funding that we had received as part of a grant from the Bureau of Land Management to do work monitoring rare species occurrences and doing seed collections. That grant was terminated on April 18th due to a change in administration priorities. We have requested that an addition of $17,261 be transferred from the Nevada Division of Forestry to help cover a position that was funded by that grant through the end of fiscal year 25.
Thank you very much. All right, I think that we might have a couple questions. One of them is from Assemblymember Watts. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you for that overview. So based on the backup materials I saw, it looks like the state was awarded and IFC actually provided the authority to accept this in December of 2023. It was a 4-year grant totaling a little over $600,000. Does that sound about correct?
Jamie McClinton for the record. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. And so then we hired a biologist to help do this work in terms of monitoring and seed collection for these rare plant species. And now that funding, the grant has been rescinded, we don't have the money to pay a Nevadan who's on the state payroll. And so this is to try and make sure that we can float that for a little bit. So do you have any updates on efforts to try and make sure that we can keep this person employed now that the federal government has terminated the funding source for the position?
Jamie McClinton for the record. Thank you, Assemblymember Watts, for your question. Yes, we have identified several smaller sources of grant funding that we have been able to use to support this position. The first was the grant that we received from the Nevada Division of Forestry to conduct monitoring for state endangered plants. We have also applied for an amendment to an existing agreement that we have with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for a similar purpose. It was originally established to support establishment of a novel database recording conservation seed collections for the state. Some of that funding was provided to an NGO that helped establish the database, the Center for Plant Conservation, and some of it was allocated to our division to support work with record development that helps to populate the database. So we have applied for and been approved to have an amendment to that agreement that will add about $46,000 of funding that will bring this position through December of 2025. And I just received word on Friday that that funding was approved. It is coming from the BLM NEPA program and going to be transferred to Fish and Wildlife and then funneled down to us through that existing agreement. So that funding was just released by BLM on Friday and transferred to Fish. So we're expecting to have the NOGA for that very soon. In the meantime, we are able to pivot this position to work on other small projects that we have currently.
Thank you, Ms. McClinton, for that information and for all your hard work. I can only imagine how stressful it is to not only lose programmatic funding, but also have somebody who's facing suddenly losing their job and trying to manage that. So I applaud your efforts. I'm glad to hear that it looks like there's at least some stability through the end of this calendar year for that person. And I guess I would just ask that you please continue to keep us updated on these efforts. And again, thank you for your work.
Thank you very much. Are there additional questions or comments on this particular item?
Yes, Madam Chair, if I might.
Go ahead, Senator Titus.
Thank you again. Appreciate you being here. I'm just curious, you comment about the seed collection that you have. Will any of these changes impact what you do with those seeds? Do you just store them, or do you actually, I know there's a number of agencies out there, our own Forest Department, I know the Walker Basin Conservancy, I know they grow some of these plants. I'm just wondering what the plans are with those seeds.
Jamie McClinton for the record. Thank you for your question, Senator. So the original grant that we received involved both monitoring and seed collection. Unfortunately, during our first summer of fieldwork in 2024, it was a very dry year, and the species that we had targeted for collection were already done by the time our crews got out there, so we were unable to collect seeds last year. The database that we have established is to aggregate data on which of our at-risk species are in collections for various institutions that are part of the Center for Plant Conservation Network. So those seeds are already being housed by places like the California Botanic Garden and the Race Hellingberry Seed Bank up in Oregon. So those existing collections will continue to remain in those institutions. The work that we're doing currently is to essentially scout for populations that we can collect. We do have some funding also directly from the Center for Plant Conservation to pay for permanent accessions of seeds that we collect this summer to one of those institutions. So the seeds that we are able to collect will be permanently accessioned.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Just a clarification, and the reason I ask is that a lot of what has happened in our state, especially in our mining world, where they are worried about things like the buckwheat, and we know that company, the mine themselves, gathered those and is growing those. And so, do you have a lot of public-private partnerships that will assume this role? It's even the Nature Conservancy, those kind of folks.
Jamie McClinton for the record. So currently out of the, we track over 600 species of rare plants. Out of those, we only have existing collections known for about 25 species. So there is a large gap in backups that are needed. However, to date, we don't have many private-public partnerships to carry out that work. We're constantly seeking funding and partners to do that.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair, for the questions.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions on this particular item? Not hearing any. With that, I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Monroe Moreno, second from Senator Cannizzaro. Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And we will move on to I. First, we will do H, item H, and I will hand it over to Mr. Thorley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wayne Thorley for the record, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. The statement of the IFC contingency account balance begins, it's in your printed packet and also in the online packet. It's on volume 3 and begins on page 189 of volume 3, tab H in your printed packet. We're straddling fiscal years right now. Fiscal year 25 is in the process of being closed out, and fiscal year 26 is open. It's the current fiscal year that we're in right now. So there are detailed statements in your packet for both FY25 and FY26. There are pending before the committee today, there's approximately $5 million worth of requests from the unrestricted portion of the contingency account. Additionally, there's a request in Agenda Item J for also about $5 million from the restricted portion of the contingency account. As a reminder, restricted funds are set aside in the IFC contingency account pursuant to various pieces of legislation approved by the legislature for there to be accessed by state agencies upon approval of the IFC for specific purposes, whereas the unrestricted portion is available for just general budget shortfalls for general fund agencies that are funded by the general fund. So in total, with all the requests, there's about $10 million worth of requests on the agenda today. If all those requests are approved, at the end of the balance at the end of the meeting in the restricted portion of the unrestricted portion would be about $31.5 million. And in the restricted portion would be about $181.6 million for a total of about $214.7 million in the contingency account. And if there are any questions that the committee members have, I'd be happy to answer those questions.
All right. Any questions from the committee up north? I don't hear any. And that is just an information only item. So if there are no questions, that means we can move on to I-1, Office of the Attorney General.
Good afternoon, chairs in Vegas. Good afternoon, members of the dais here in Carson City. For the record, Teresa Benitez Thompson with the Office of Attorney General. I'm here with me, two members from our accounting division, our Chief Financial Officer, Jessica Hoban, as well as Ann with us today. Ann Jones as well with us today at the dais. So we're here to address this item. This item is requesting a transfer from ISC contingency funds to cover revenue reductions specific to district court assessment fee reductions is the biggest chunk at around $36,000. But we're happy to answer any questions that you have. But not everyone at once.
Thank you very much. Sorry, we were looking at something. All right, with that, I believe we don't have any questions from the committee. All righty, thank you very much. With no questions from the committee, I will take a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you very much. Second from Senator Cannizzaro. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And we will go on to item I-4A. And please go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Mike Edgell, M-I-K-E-E-D-G-E-L-L, with the Department of Public Safety, the Nevada State Police. I'm the Colonel of the Highway Patrol. We are here to ask for the allocation of $14,261 to fund the cost associated with providing protection to visiting dignitaries. I'd like to provide a little backstory for this request. At the June IFC meeting, June 13th, Highway Patrol representatives provided testimony for the allocation of funds for visiting dignitary protection and provided clarification based on cost projections that we would not need additional funding, assuming that this was a standard normal dignitary visit. Shortly after that IFC meeting, it was realized that the requested funds were not adequate. While doing research into the discrepancy, it was realized that there was a miscommunication or an assumption that this was a normal single dignitary visit, which it was not. This visit required two protection details, one for the dignitary, which was the Vice President of the United States, and the other for the spouse and family. There were additional places visited with multiple trips. Due to the, I'll call it a lack of misunderstanding or a lack of miscommunication, or a miscommunication, I apologize, we are now requesting the additional allocation of funds. And the Highway Patrol leadership is now in place to ensure proper communication so we can try to prevent this from happening in the future. And we're available for any questions.
Thank you very much. I think I have one, and that is, I appreciate all that you all do, and our thoughts are with our patrol officer who was injured last evening. But when these type of visits happen, does the federal government send any funding to you at all, or is this all on each state to pay?
Mike Edgell for the record, we do not get any reimbursement.
So the $14,261 is what comes out of our pocket, essentially, for the federal government to visit here.
Yes, that is correct. Mike Edgell for the record. Yes, that is correct. It comes out of the general fund.
Thank you. I just keep going back to the food discussion, so how much food that could buy. So thank you very much, and thank you for what you do. And any additional questions from the committee? Up north? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Monroe Moreno, second from Senator Canizaro. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time today. All right, we will move to I-5 and J jointly, the Office of Indigent Defense Services. And Deputy Director, when you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. Homa Sayar, H-O-M-A, last name S-A-Y-Y-A-R, Deputy Director of the Nevada Department of Indigent Defense Services. Also with me at the table is our Nevada State Public Defender, Andrew Coates, last name is C-O-A-T-E-S. Regarding my question for the chair is, would you like us to present both together or whatever your preference is?
Yes, that's fine, both together.
Thank you. Homasaya for the record. Item I-5 is a request for an allocation of $315,183 for the Nevada State Public Defender related to the prior fiscal year. The agenda characterizes it as a revenue shortfall. The main reference to that shortfall relates to the prior contract with Carson City for the Nevada State Public Defender's services. It was known at the time the budget was last built that they were exiting, but there wasn't enough time to adjust the way that was structured. So this is sort of an anticipated request. You'll note that it was reduced related to mitigation efforts, but obviously there's recruiting, retention, and other efforts in complying with the Davis settlement. I will note that that was recently amended to give the state of Nevada some extension, some additional reporting requirements. Our state public defender's office is currently working on services in Humboldt County. They have just kind of expanded to a contract there. They're currently using contract attorneys to fulfill the need while recruiting and establishment is happening. Then they also have in White County the Ely office. So obviously these funds were needed for ongoing efforts, ongoing expenses, and then, as you'll note, there were significant mitigation efforts. The Item J is related to the request for allocation related to making our counties whole in terms of the way the statutory scheme is set up. In my prior life, I was an attorney for Nevada Medicaid, so I think of it in terms of a deductible. So it's the best way I've been able to describe it is our counties meet sort of their deductible on expenditures for indigent defense services, and then the state comes by with the rest. You'll note that sort of the fourth quarter tends to be an interesting time because we don't know when they're going to actually hit their deductible. These are as a result of increased expenses for indigent defense. For example, in Nye County, they've had to, in order to attract contractors, they've had to increase their contracts to $200,000 over $175,000. They're experiencing similar retention and recruitment issues as our state public defender's office does, and then just the ongoing increased travel, increased other expenses. But I will note that this is not a matter of authority. This was anticipated. This is a matter of funding that authority. So we always appreciate the opportunity to come and have a dialogue with the legislature about the work that we're doing. I think that's an important sort of check and balance, and that's how our department views this request. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And I believe we do have a couple questions, and I'll start with Senator Scheibel.
Thank you so much, Chair Dondero-Loop, and thank you for being here to present to us this morning. And I was hoping you could clarify for me, Humboldt County is transitioning to utilize the state public defender. Carson City is moving away from the state public defender, so they're establishing their own public defense office or contract attorneys. And was there one other county that was making the change as well?
Homasiah, for the record, through the chair to Senator Scheibel. Thank you for the question. I was perhaps inartful in how I characterized the timing of Carson City. They exited in fiscal year 24, and then so they've been running their own office through, the support of the county commission. The additional office in, and I will note that in fiscal year 24, we did not have any requests to address the revenue shortfall because we were able to meet the need financially. This is related only to fiscal year 25. And then Humboldt County, as of July 1st, has started a contract with the Nevada State Public Defender's Office. The Nevada State Public Defender's Office has a contract with the law firm of Mansfield Mayo out in Humboldt County to sort of, cases don't slow down while things are getting set up. They've been establishing office space, they've been recruiting, they've been retaining attorneys and staff. And then White Pine County is the one that I had mentioned that had an existing, kind of ongoing contract. And the challenge in that office is obviously, attorney recruitment is difficult anyway. Attorney recruitment in the rurals comes up against, housing costs and other challenges. So a lot of staffing for the White Pine County comes from travel from, I think, primarily attorneys in more urban areas, including Las Vegas.
Thank you for that clarification. So at this point in time, how many counties do have contracts with DIDS?
Homasiah, for the record, their contract, so the way that we're structured is the Nevada Department of Indigent Defense Services has under it the Nevada State Public Defender's Office. The contracts that the two counties have are with the Nevada State Public Defender's Office. I'd also note that when counties, those counties do also have municipal representation that they do direct reimbursement for. It's a minute amount at this point, but I believe it was about $22,000, just for Ely, for that coverage that they get from the State Public Defender's Office. But there are those contracts, and related to the Davis settlement, we're an opt-in model. So at any time, a county could opt in to the State Public Defender's services. What we found is that they're starting to recognize sort of the quality and value proposition that the office offers. That for less than their normal expenditures, they can opt in, and so we heard rumblings of other counties possibly considering opting into some or all services from the State Public Defender's Office. So it's something that's really hard to project, but at the moment we're aware of the two. But I don't know if the State Public Defender has anything he'd like to supplement on that.
Thank you. Andrew Coates, Nevada State Public Defender. For the record, don't have anything to supplement with that, but certainly happy to take any questions whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one more question because I do appreciate the breadth of work that the Department of Indigent Defense Services and the State Public Defender do in providing representation throughout Nevada and especially in our rural and frontier areas. So, going through the request today for a little over $5 million, I completely understand, how we got there. It's kind of a good sign to me, actually, that we're providing these services. So we're billing for them and people are getting paid to represent indigent people in all parts of Nevada. My question is, we created this funding formula, I don't know, about 2 to 4 years ago. Did we miss the mark? Are we going to have, increased costs every year moving forward? Do we need to adjust that formula? Or should we just expect to continue to do business this way with the current formula as it is, and then supplementing it at the end of each fiscal year?
Homasaya, for the record, the good news is that the legislature has already made that adjustment. So obviously we're looking at, the prior fiscal year. The funding sort of structure has been adjusted to the extent that our office has, received a lot of what we had asked for, and we were heard. I'd note that this was highlighted in the monitor's report to the court related to the Davis settlement, that there was legislation regarding the independence of our office. There was funding. I believe we're at about sort of double what we were previously allocated. The way I have seen the dynamic is I absolutely understand sort of the concern that is this just going to keep ballooning in a way. It's not funding alone, right? It's the efforts that we're all undertaking to improve indigent defense, education, law school, all those sorts of things. So it's very, very hard to predict. But at this point, I would say that I think that we're in really good shape to that where we would be returning to IFC or making other requests. It's all consistent with things we've been entirely transparent about, that, okay, we need this funding. Perhaps IFC or the legislature says, well, let's set it aside. You can come and ask for it when it's proven to be needed. So, for example, for item J, if there are stale claims that present, they would obviously show up next year, and we don't really know what may be out there. I will say that one of our roles in oversight is that in that deductible model, even if the Department of Indigent Defense Services is not paying a county for an expenditure, for example, on a contract attorney, we review those bills. So we all spend a lot of time looking at the attorney time, the attorney expenses, and saying, like, is that deductible being met in I'm not saying legitimate as if that would be illegitimate, but in an ethical and responsible way. So some of the efforts that we've undertaken is we've been pushing out contract opportunities for our contracted attorneys. For example, we've been able to get Southwest Airlines to agree to give them the state rate on their travel, because ultimately either it's reimbursable or it counts towards that deductible. We've been able to leverage other purchasing contracts, including for car rentals. We're in the middle of it'll be about a third of the cost for transcription services. So we're trying to be really proactive. And how do we cut costs that we're seeing, because we see these bills come through, education about ethical billing. And then one effort that we actually had a law student extern this summer, and we've been looking at, putting all of our monitor data into pivot tables and then possibly aligning that with our billing data to find out, okay, we've got monitors observing somebody in court and saying, hey, they were really effective. We could actually go back to Legal Server or whatever platform we're using and find out what kind of time are they spending and where might it be better served if it turns out that it's not effective. So we're trying to be really creative. So in a way, to answer your question, there's the hard costs, travel goes up, cost of living, all those things that we're trying to keep abreast of. But we are trying to identify areas where we can share the savings with the counties and be a good partner.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional questions? Up north? Okay, with that, I will accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you very much. Assemblymember Monroe Moreno, second by Senator Canizero. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And we will move on to item L1.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Dundara Loop and committee. My name is Will Lewis, Lewis. I'm the Administrator for Public Works I have with me Brian Walker, my deputy administrator, and I may have a couple of representatives with the guard up north if we need to phone a friend. So we have before the committee a request to receive and expend an additional $1,441,000 in federal funds and this is in response to increase the building size 3,900 square feet. And that's CIP project 21P05, which is the advanced planning. It's a general instruction building at the Floyd Etzel Training Center in Las Vegas. I'd like to make just a brief statement for the committee regarding this project. The future construction funding for this project, we've been notified by the National Guard at the end of July of this year that the federal funding will not be available until 2035 through the federal funding system. So in response to that, the Guard intends to submit this project for consideration in the 2027 CIP as a 100% state-funded project. So I'd like the committee to be known or to make the committee aware that this alters the previous expectations that the federal funds would be available for the upcoming construction of this project. And with that said, then I'll answer any questions, or we'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. And I believe Assemblymember Backus has a question or two.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I do kind of have a few questions, but let me go ahead and start with this because I think it's interesting that there was additional federal funds of about 1.4 million on top of the 4 million by just adding an additional 3,900 square feet to a 68,000 square foot building. Can you kind of discuss, and you may need to call a friend on this, what the need for that modification to add the 3,900 square feet was for?
Administrator Will Lewis, thank you for the question, Senator Assemblyman Backus. I'd like to ask someone to Guard to kind of give a response for that. I see we have a couple of representatives there.
Jamie Ivey, Deputy Director for Installations Environment for the National Guard, JAYME-IVEY. Our programmed amount was 72,000 square feet, 72,100 square feet. I think there was a miscommunication when we originally submitted this project in the 21 CIP, and our federal funds were always registered as $5,490,000. So I think there was a miscommunication during the 21 CIP for those numbers.
Okay, so I was kind of thinking that the additional 1.4 million kind of pertained to that. So today, I mean, obviously we're here to approve the federal funds that we're receiving and also look at this additional change of the scope. So the 3,900 had nothing to do with the additional money. This is just, we're here to, I just want to make sure I understand the scope, that we're here to just basically look at the change of the scope of the CIP project to just add the additional 3,900 to the planning. Can you elaborate on that, about this, like a kind of typo that happened in 2021 and then we apparently extended the time period again in 2023? I'm just a little confused by this.
Jamie Ivey for the record. Unfortunately, I was not here on the submission for the 21 CIP, but I can speak that our programmed amount to Congress was for the 72,100 square feet. And within that allocation, they gave us $5,490,000 for design. That was not approved until the 25 federal funds through Senator Rosen's request to Congress. So it took us some delay to get those funds, and we've received those. So we just wanted to come here and get that added to the scope.
Madam Chair, thank you for the additional questions, because now I just got to clarify this. So we have the correct square footage that we relied upon to submit to get the federal funding, and I appreciate Senator Rosen getting that congressional appropriation to provide those funds. But when we sent it out to bid then to the outside consultant to do the planning and design, wouldn't we have provided them with the appropriate square footage at that time?
Jamie Ivey, for the record, I would assume that that square footage was provided.
And then also I have a question on, actually, let me kind of stay with that 3,900. What would be the consequences to the Office of the Military then if the scope modification increases the square footage by that 3,900 when the office has already sent it out to the consultant for the bid to that it would be inclusive of that 3,900? Can you help me with there?
Jamie Ivey, for the record, I'm a little confused by the question.
What would be the consequences today if we did not approve the additional 3,900 square footage? As if I understand it correctly, the consultant has already bid it to include the 3,900, but if we don't approve that today, what are the consequences? Like, are there going to be any penalties with the monies that have been received from the federal government? I'm trying to understand if that 3,900 square foot is not approved.
Clayton Chappell, for the record. That's CHAPPELL, Director, Installations and Environment for the Nevada Army National Guard. The 3,900 square feet would not break or stop the project. The importance is the state receiving the $1.4 million, the entire design funds the federal government has to offer for this. We would adjust the design to the square footage that was originally put out, but the 3,900 square feet would be to the requirements that that facility is actually allowed to have.
So let me just repeat what you're saying. So would we be losing any of the federal funding because our application had represented that it was inclusive of 3,900, or would it not really affect it? We could just adjust the plans. Just kind of trying to understand that.
For the record, Clayton Chappell. Correct. If we take the 3,900 square feet out, we will not stop the project. The more important thing is grabbing the federal funds that are available and designing to what was originally put out. But it would not stop the project.
Okay, thank you for that. One thing though is, as you guys presented, the struggle here is that the rest of the federal funds that would be available for actual construction won't be available till fiscal year 2035, which is about 10 years out. Have there been discussions with the consultant and doing the design of this new building, whether those plans would really be accurate? As I look at it 10 years out, there could be changes in building code requirements or other requirements that would require the plans to be redone. Just because knowing we have a lot of planning projects kind of coming up in our next legislative session in 2027, where we may not be able to fund this type of project with all state funding.
Administrator Will Lewis for the record.
Sorry.
Give me a second. Administrator Will Lewis for the record. That is an excellent question, Assemblyman Baca. And we've expressed our concern with the agency, and I know Mr. Clayton would like to chime in on that as well. That's one of the concerns. We feel that in 10 years, any building code requirements, any life safety requirements, we anticipate that to change. And so knowing that, again, that would have to be taken into consideration when we get to 2035.
Clayton Chappell, sorry about that. Clayton Chappell for the record. I just want to clarify a couple of points that were put out there. the potential of receiving the construction funds, if not designed, is going to be 2035. If we start the design and going upon what we've experienced going through State Public Works Division in our design and in particular our construction projects, it takes anywhere from 2 to ultimately 5 years to get these designed and get our projects completed. So 2027, as Administrator Lewis had indicated, would be pretty early on. That means they are designing, this is going to go out to design now and be completed and ready for the CIP in 27. That is highly unlikely based on the experience that we've had in our projects through State Public Works Division over the last 10 years, particularly the last 5 years. We're anticipating 5 years, maybe 3, to get this design done. We anticipate coming back to the state to asking for additional funds as well as federal funds in probably the 29 CIP, possibly 31 CIP, depending on how long it takes to get this design work done. So the 2035 is a potential if we do not get this design work done, that Senator Rosen is able to secure these federal funds in this current federal landscape we have.
Thank you for that. And Chair, I just have one last question, just because obviously I'm concerned of the importance of the building. Is how has the delay in the receipt of federal funds for the planning and design project impacted the ability of the Office of the Military to maintain its accreditation for training the National Signal Non-Commissioned Officer Corps?
Once again, Clayton Chappell for the record. The Regional Training Institute, which is the unit that this would be designed for down in southern Nevada at our North Las Vegas area, is going through auditing and has gone through auditing. And in the last probably about 3 audit cycles that they've gone, it's anywhere from 18 to 24 months, has noted that they are not in the appropriate facility. And as the federal government, as the National Guard is looking to reduce in certain areas, this RTI has been one on the list, and we're concerned if we don't push this thing forward, we may end up losing a premier regional training institute that is providing non-commissioned officers training in signal and communications, and ultimately we're looking at cyber, expanding it into cyber warfare as well. Thanks.
Thank you for that.
Additional comments, questions? Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to get more clarification around the 5 million, or I'm just going to call it the Rosen money. So is there a deadline that you have to expend that by? And that's what you're afraid of?
Jamie Ivey for the record. We do have an expiration date. If this money is not approved, or if there's anything that happens to this project that it will say canceled, that money goes directly back to National Guard Bureau, and we will not ever be able to get it in the future for the same project, and it would be detrimental to our program if we lose that funding.
What's the deadline?
Currently, we need to have this money obligated by the end of this fiscal year, which is 30 September. But it is a 5-year expendable money, so we do have 5 years to start and finish the design. But within that 5 years, National Guard Bureau does have a timeline that certain metrics need to be met for 35%, 65%, and 100%. So that we're not holding on to the money for a full 5 years. If that's the case, they'll request us to turn it in early so that they can give it to another state to obligate and use. Thank you.
Madam Chair, follow up? Yes. So by September 30th, what part of the process are you in order to, what metric have you met so far? Because I don't understand, like, technically the project was obligated to a degree for a certain square footage. And so what's the missing link here on what you need to have take place by September 30th before that money is pulled?
Jamie Ivy for the record. We would need to have this project started with the design team for initial steps. I believe March is the next threshold date for 35% design. So if we do not begin the process of design with initial kickoff meetings and the design team to start building the foundation for this building through drawings, then we're up to scrutiny and subject to have our funds pulled by March. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Okay. Any additional comments?
Chair, I do have a question if you get a chance.
Oh, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Assemblymember Anderson, thank you for the presentation. I'm looking through the background information that has to do with the project narrative as well as the project cost estimate. And there's obviously a 4-year difference when this information it appears that the narrative was written in 2020 and the estimate is from 2024. There's a significant difference in what the narrative had in those 4 years. I mean, to the point where it's almost 3 times as much. If this is not approved today, but we're able somehow or another still to be able to finagle a way to get it approved at a later date, do we know that the estimate that is actually presented to us today on page 263 of our materials, do we know that this is as accurate as possible? Since again, this information is actually from 2024 information, or has there been more information that has been studied? So that way when we're on the hook for this money, we have a little bit of a better idea of what it is.
Brian Walker for the record, WACKER, Deputy Administrator of the State Public Works. The cost estimate that you're looking at on page 263, it does have the 2024 date. The construction cost detail on the right side of that page was developed this spring. Our project manager worked with the Guard to develop that cost estimate based on their program needs. So that estimate is in today's dollars and it is as accurate as information as we have today.
Thank you so much for that clarification because, it is going to be a little bit of a commentary. I'm hearing from many others, building groups and everything else, that supplies are continuing to go up even since the spring. And so if we are on the hook as a state, there's a possibility of the federal government not in fact giving the money. I'm worried about where we're going to be in 10 years from now. So just wanted to put that commentary out there, that although this is from the spring, and so the date that is listed of 2024 is not quite accurate, it's very concerning. And I'm just not comfortable yet at this time. But Chair, just wanted to put that out there. Thank you so much for this time.
Thank you very much.
Jamie Ivy for the record, if I could.
Yes, go ahead.
Just to follow on comment with that, when we submit these plans for review, both at NGB and for Congress, if it moves forward for appropriation, we do cost escalations for the year that they are going to appropriate in. So today's dollars plus tacked on with the actual construction documents where we can get a real working estimate from the design engineer and design teams, because we've seen a variation of difference in what we have estimated on these sheets to when we actually get real working construction documents. And I do believe there's also a CMAR on this project, which will also help us gauge in a realistic range for real today construction dollars. We will adjust our federal request to also include upcoming fiscal year escalations. So we wouldn't leave the state on the hook, because we do look out for both federal and state taxpayer dollars to do our due diligence in requesting federal funds. Thank you.
Assemblymember Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure I understand and you can give me some clarification. So this process started in 2021, correct?
Jamie Abbey for the
Brian
record,
Walker
yes.
for the record. Sorry. It actually started, this process started in spring 2020 when the Guard made a CIP project request.
Thank you for that. And early into this conversation, the statement was made that there was a miscommunication in 2021. When you say miscommunication, I think that's like a conversation, but we have everything in written documents. So clarify to me what that miscommunication was in 2021 that we're dealing with now.
Brian Walker for the record. I think I could start, and I think the Guard could probably follow up on this as well. When we do CIP project applications, a project information is transmitted to State Public Works. We develop a budget and a scope. We review that with the agency, and the agency actually presents that project to the State Public Works Board that summer, so that this project would have been presented to our board in summer 2020. And so when I hear miscommunication, that's hitting me a little bit sideways, because it is a process that is intended to be collaborative, where we have the agency working with us. Mistakes can be made. There could be miscommunication. I know that this was a project that went through the 21 CIP and was approved, but because the federal funds weren't in place, it's been on hold for obviously about 4 years, right? And so this, it's not surprising to me that we have a change in program, change in project costs or expectations for something that's been on hold for so long.
Jamie Abbey
As
for the
stated.
record. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I kind of want to add some clarification. So our federal planning document is also called a 139091, which is what we submit. And it is a living document. Our scope does change year to year, which is also when we change the price. I do believe post 21 CIP, the change on that document may have happened, and I do believe that's where the miscommunication has happened. When I say we'll take the onus of that on our side was not communicated with State Public Works to make the change through an IFC action at the time in 2021, which is why I do believe that we are coming here today. In addition to the $1.4 million that we're adding to this project, is also to make the clarification for that 3,900 square feet.
And then I think maybe my last question, if we don't continue with the expansion and we go with how the plans for this building was set in the beginning, how will that affect the additional resources that was secured for the state from Senator Rosen? Could that resource be used for the original plan as it was initiated in 2021, since there was, or 2020 actually, since there was miscommunication between the two divisions of adjustments? How would that impact the $5 million additional dollars? Would we still be able to utilize those?
Jamie Ivey for the record. Speaking from the federal perspective, if we do not add that 3,900 square foot, we'll still continue to build to the original 68,000 square feet for the complex. As far as federal funding, we won't be penalized, but we will be restricted to what we designed to.
And since you're, Madam Chair, Mayor?
Yes.
And since you're restricted to what you were originally designed to, we understand that the cost for construction has increased. Will we be able to utilize that $5 million for the original plan to cover that additional construction cost? Because we may not actually get to construction until 2030 at this rate?
Jamie Ivey for the record. The $5,490,000 will still be used for the planning of construction documents for this, will not be penalized or have to send back any money if the 3,900 additional square feet is not approved today.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the questions.
Thank you very much. All right. Any additional thoughts, questions, discussion? We're going to take just a couple-minute recess. Okay, we're back. All right, Assemblymember Bacchus has a question.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. When we had this little break, I was thinking, I thought I heard something, and I want to just make sure I understood it correctly, is with respect to the contract and the work that's already been started by the outside consultant, when that was entered, is the scope right now that's moving forward inclusive of that 3,900 square feet? And if so, where would we be at? Because one of my concerns is if we kind of contemplate saying we don't want to agree to like the scope change of the 3,900 additional square footage, that at the end may be a change in scope for our consultant. So I really want to understand where that's at right now.
Brian Walker for the record. Assemblymember Bacchus, thank you for that question. It's a great question. Here. Too many screens. So yes, we have a contract with an architect, with our consultant right now. We've had a contract in place with them for basically 4 years. We did a formal selection, selected a firm, and had a contract executed. It's been on hold for 4 years. So no work has taken place on this project yet. We have not moved forward. The scope of that contract is based on the original 21 PO5 project, the original square footage, the original construction cost.
I thank you for that, Mr. Walker. And with that, I think, Madam Chair, I would be ready to pose a motion then, since that has not been included and we've been kind of in reliance on the lower square footage. I would move to approve to receive the funding, but not approve the additional 3,900 square footage, just so that this CIP planning project stays consistent with the contract that has been entered into.
Thank you very much for that motion, Assembly Member, and second by Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on that particular motion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. And thank you very much for being here. And we will move on to L2.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Administrator Will Lewis for the record. So what we have before the committee is a request to modify project CIP 21M43, which is the domestic hot water system and transformer replacement of the Office of Adjunct General. And again, this was a request by the agency based on NRS 341.145. We'll answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions on this particular item? I don't see any. All right, with that, I'll accept a motion. Thank you very much, Assemblymember Monroe Moreno, second from Senator Canizaro. Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here today. All right, we'll move on to item M, and that is Business and Industry Housing Division.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Christine Hess from the Housing Division. You all are very hardworking in the summer. I had prepped my testimony to start with good morning, but you had a lot of work to do. So I appreciate this opportunity to be here today. Administrator Acroth is in Las Vegas, so you have me. I will keep my presentation short. Happy to answer any questions. In your packets, we submitted information, of course, per the deadline, so about 2 months ago, for the Home Means Nevada initiative update, As is customary for the Housing Division, we like to give you a up-to-the-minute update, if you will, on the expenditures. And it's pretty exciting. Since the report was submitted, we have since processed about $35 million in reimbursements for the HMNI. So we are up to about $280 million of the $500 million spent, representing about 56%. Since June, we now have 14 projects that have fully spent their HMNI funding. If you'll recall, these projects still may be ongoing, but they're all prioritizing these ARPA funds first. And since June, we now have 17 projects that have spent more than 50% of their funding. So that's an increase of 5 projects, up from 12. And again, since June, we now have only 22 projects that have spent less than 50%. The average spend for those 22 projects is 22%. And again, that's 6 more projects have moved into the above 50% spending. Again, as the GFO is also processing so many reimbursement requests, we also have handled more than 400 requests. The Housing Division team, the Housing Division grants team, which is starting to step into the project, has been fantastic. Obviously, the division's fiscal team, my unit, I also appreciate so much, and our consultants, ICF. I did want to share with you, just to give the committee a better understanding, and because Administrator Across here, I get to hog the microphone, a better understanding of what reimbursements in the affordable housing development space look like, because it can sometimes present challenges as we work through typical grant expenditure types of requirements or outlines that other state agencies might have. I guess that's better way to say it. The highest Home Means Nevada initiative draw that our team has processed so far has been $5.6 million. And the lowest draw amount that we have processed so far, $846. So in and amongst our development recipients and nonprofit partners, you can see the different types of projects that the Housing Division team is working with. Sometimes it's for homeownership repair, potentially a land purchase in this HMNI space, or the construction or rehabilitation. So we also process hundreds and hundreds of pages of compliance per request, and sometimes those backup documents are smaller. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. And with that, any questions on our housing information? Not seeing anybody up north? Not hearing anybody. All right. Thank you very much. And with that,
Thank you.
I will. Thank you. And with that, I'll accept a motion. Oh, sorry, we're just on information only. All righty, we won't accept a motion. Thank you very much. All right, with that, we will go to the last item on our agenda, and that is public comment. And anyone here in Las Vegas? Anyone in Carson City? Anyone on the phone lines, AVH, when you're ready?
Thank you, Chair. To provide public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no public comment callers at this time.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, we are done with this information. Our next meeting will be in October, unless something exciting happens in between that. And I thank everyone for spending the day with us. I thank all of you here on the committee and up in Carson City, and those of you that had to take time away from work. We appreciate your availability. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.